Hello, everybody. Can we all settle in? While we're settling in, I'd like to clarify the last section, the furthest section over here. I need you, any voters, registered voters, need to be in these two sections. That far section is for non-residents only. All right, if everybody's settled in, I'll call this meeting to order at 10:07. And with that, I'd like to welcome you all to today's deliberative session for the town of Litchfield. And my name is Steve Perry. I'll be serving as your moderator for today. I live at 5 Livingston Lane with my wife, Catherine, my son and daughter, Hannah and Nathan, and I've been in town for over 23 years. With that, can we all stand? Please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll first start with our administrative announcements. And I'll reiterate again, only non-voters in that far section. Before we commence our meeting and consideration for warrants, there are a few housekeeping matters to discuss. State law prohibits smoking anywhere at school grounds. The restrooms, they're located in the hallway just past the auditorium on the right. Food and drink are not allowed in the auditorium. Special exception has been made for those that are speaking. Please silence all cell phones to minimize disturbance during this meeting. Emergency exits are the doors you entered through, as well as the doors to the side and rear of the stage. Lastly, let's please have all residents whom are authorized to vote sit in the center and the far left sections of the auditorium. Please let's have all non-residents, non-voting persons seated in the far right. Introductions. I would like to have the chairs and committee leaders introduce the people who you'll be hearing and speaking on the articles today. I will ask for each of them to come to the microphone and introduce the members of their respective boards or committees. We're going to start with the Budget Committee with Chair John Davidson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. With John Davidson, Chair of the Budget Committee. With us today, I have Kate Stevens, Vice Chair, Bill Hayes, Member, Derek Barca, Member, Scott Taylor, Member, Carrie Douglas, Member, Bob Leary, Selectman's Rep. We also have Andrew Cutter, who's a School Board Rep. Unable to be with us today is Brian Burke, who's also a member. And before I turn it over to Ms. Ames, I just want to take a second and thank Mr. Barca for his 3 years of service on the Budget Committee.
Good morning. My name is Heidi Ames. I am the chair of the school board. Up here on stage with me is Ms. Tina Harrison, Mr. Andrew Cutter, Mr. Peter Polanski, and Mr. Matt Shoemaker. And we also have, for our district representation, we also have our superintendent, Mike Jetty, our business administrator, Doug Totten, who is making copies for us right now, and our legal counsel, Gordon Graham. Thank you.
Okay, this is the non-fun part of this meeting. Well, I guess some more other parts could be on fun, but this is the rules and procedures. Litchfield operates on a Senate Bill 2 procedures. This means that we will review and discuss and amend, if necessary, any warrant articles presented today to be voted on official ballot on Election Day. Election Day will be March 12th. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. down at the gymnasium like always. If we make no amendments to the warrant articles as they appear on the ballot, let me start that again. If we make no amendments to these warrant articles, they will appear on the ballot as you see them today. If we do make amendments, they will appear on the ballot as you've amended them. For this deliberative session, the moderator will read each warrant article and recognize the speaker. The moderator will then open the floor for discussion, questions, and amendments if appropriate. If a voter wishes to propose an amendment, he or she must present the moderator with a signed written draft that includes their property address. The moderator will then review the amendment for completeness and adherence to the law. The moderator will read the proposed amendment so that all voters can understand, and afterwards will seek a second for the motion. Once moved and seconded, I will recognize the sponsoring voter to present their motion. Index cards are available at the stage, along with pens, which they are right there, right in front of me, that you can use to submit those amendments. Note, state law prohibits amendments if they change the primary subject matter of the original warrant, nor can negative motions to amend be valid so that a no is tallied as a yes. We cannot have more than one amendment under consideration at one time, so amendments to amendments are not allowed. Every effort will be made to give recognition to all wishing to speak. If you choose to speak, you must come down to one of the microphones in front, either one. Board members wishing to speak, offering their own opinion or an amendment as a citizen, must exit the stage and use the microphones down front. When speaking, please clearly state your name and address. All comments are to be directed to the moderator. The moderator will then prompt for a response. Comments are not meant to go into long dialogue, as continued dialogue may not be allowed in the interest of time and to others. Typically, one follow-up question will be allowed. After that, please move to the back of any line to exercise fairness to all. Personal attacks and profanity will not be permitted. I can't stress that enough. We all come here, we all do our part. Everybody has the right to their opinion, but it doesn't mean we have the right to degrade anyone. Please try to avoid redundancy. If you don't, I will remind you if it's already been said multiple times. Any motion to end debate must be made immediately after stating your name and address. The moderator will seek a second to the motion and then put the question to voters. If successful, the moderator will immediately call a vote to the question. A motion to adjourn will not be accepted until all warrant articles have been discussed and finalized. According to state law, town and school district meetings are run by what's called moderator rules. This means that, as I am doing now, the moderator sets the ground rules for conduct at the meeting. However, law also allows you, the voters, to overturn my rulings by simple majority. To overturn the moderator's ruling, a voter may request a point of order to overturn the moderator. Immediately after the moderator rules, the moderator will then recognize the voter who may, if desired, explain his or her point of order. The moderator will then poll the voters, and if the majority agrees with the voter, then the moderator's ruling will be overturned. Motions to table articles will not be in order unless it is made to table until a specific time and place in today's agenda and before the closing of this meeting. A motion to reconsider an article after it is closed will not be in order unless there is no warrant under consideration, example, between warrants, and until it is seconded and approved by a simple majority. Reconsidered articles must be discussed and the closure reached before the end of this meeting. A motion to restrict reconsideration to any or all previous warrants will not be in order unless there is no other warrant under consideration. Again, between warrants is the appropriate time. It must be seconded and approved by a simple majority vote. Only those people that are on the checklist as qualified voters are permitted to vote at any time. If the moderator receives a complaint or notices a non-voter voting, then I will require that non-voter to leave the auditorium. And as a reminder, that far section is for only non-voters. So anybody that's come in that is a voter, you need to move to one of these two sections. As you came into the meeting today, the ballot clerks gave each voter a sheet of yes/no ballots. the little pink sheet. These are yours to use for secret ballots. Please do not drop them on the floor or leave them behind in the seating area. When the meeting comes to a close, please either leave them on the table outside the auditorium or up here on the stage. The moderator must conduct a secret yes/no ballot when 5 or more voters make a signed written request to the moderator prior to a voice, hand, or standing vote on an article. The moderator will conduct a recount of any secret ballot that immediately following any vote that yields less than a 10% difference. The moderator must conduct a secret yes/no ballot when 7 or more voters challenge any verbal, hand, or standing vote immediately after the results are announced and before any other business is begun. This challenge can be made verbally or written. Any secret yes/no vote will be collected by the moderator, the assistant moderator, and/or clerk, and/or persons I designate. Those votes will be collected down front. This is a change from what we've done in the past. The reason for that change is we want to make sure that if somebody leaves and they leave their sheet behind, somebody doesn't get to vote more than their turn. If anybody is unable to come down and hand in their vote, please just raise your hand and one of us will come and retrieve it. Approval of all warrant article amendments at deliberative session shall be made by a simple majority. A voice or hand vote will be the primary methods of voting. If it is not clearly distinguishable by voice, then hand voting will be taken. Speakers as well as voters, please refrain from using acronyms. All right, so in prior history, it's been your prerogative to permit non-voters to speak at this meeting. It has been customary to allow employees, council, and non-registered residents to speak at this meeting. If you wish to continue to do so, please signify by saying yes. Yes. Those opposed, please say no. The yeses have it. Now, let's get to the business part of our meeting.
Mr. Motter.
Thank you. All right, so the first thing we have is Warrant Article 1. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $44,290,000 to fund the design, construction, original equipping, and related costs of the new Litchfield Elementary School on school district land near the current Griffin Memorial School, with $38,617,870 of such sum to be raised by the issuance of bonds or notes in compliance with the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 31A, as amended. With such bonds and notes to be issued in phases over multiple years and amounts to be determined by the school board, which amounts shall not be in the aggregate to exceed 38 million, wow, I'm all messed up here. All right, let's go back to the part where I said so as amended, with such bonds and notes to be issued in phases over multiple years and amounts to be determined by the school board, which amounts shall not in the aggregate exceed $38,617,870, with $5,672,130 of such sum to come from state building aid, to authorize the school board to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver said bonds and notes, and to determine the rate of interest thereon, and the maturity of other terms thereof, to authorize the school board to apply for, obtain, accept, and expend federal or state aid, including state building aid or other aid, if any, which may be available for said project. To authorize the school board to make any other action or to pass any other vote relative thereto, and finally, to raise and appropriate the additional sum of $53,950 for the first year's payment on that bond. This article is contingent on the award of state building aid, and if such aid is not awarded to the district, this article will be null and void. 3/5 ballot vote required to approve this article. The estimated tax impact per 1,000 is 4 cents. Recommended by the school board, 5-0-0. Recommended by the budget committee, 5-4-0. Boy, was that a mouthful. So, we're going to go into this warrant article, and we're going to have Miss Tina Harris, who is going to speak on behalf of this article. I think you'll hear from most of the school board, but she's going to be the starter.
And I'm actually cutting her to let folks know that we did run out of handouts earlier, but there are copies of the warrant articles up at the front desk if you were not able to grab one when you came in. So just so you know, they are up there. Feel free to grab one at your leisure. Thank you.
So yes, Article 1 is indeed a mouthful, but don't worry, we are going to endeavor to explain it in details today, and there will be information in the voter guide that comes out as well. So in preparing for our presentation today, I came across an article about GMS. I just have a few quotes. I won't read the whole thing. In the article, it said, if town meeting voters approve a proposal to construct a new elementary school, it would be the last school the community will ever have to build. That was stated by a board member. According to the board chair, the building committee investigated the option of renovating the Griffin building, but decided that the plan would not be cost effective, adding that officials have been studying the district's elementary school space needs for 10 years. The building is so old and badly in need of renovations. It has no sprinkler system for fire protection, so it doesn't meet building code requirements. Its septic system and boilers are outdated. Because of the water problems, dehumidifiers are needed in every classroom. Residents said that the board should emphasize safety and health issues as it tries to convince voters to back the proposal for a new school. The water and mold problems at Griffin should be stressed, several said, along with the fact that a new facility would be more energy efficient and could be built without interrupting educational programs. The article was published in New Hampshire Business Review in December of 2004. Here we are, 20 years later. Many taxpayer-funded studies, multiple school boards and budget committees, facilities committees, capital planning committees, engineers and architects, numerous parents, staff members, taxpayers, and voters, and the New Hampshire Department of Education have reached the same conclusion. It's time for a new elementary school. One only needs to look at Litchfield's rank for state building aid to identify the needs. Aside from financial need, Litchfield ranked second in the state for health, safety, and efficiency needs. Litchfield received high scores for unsafe conditions, including fire safety, environmental conditions, traffic, and other categories. Inefficient or unsuitable conditions, building envelope, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, ADA compliance, educational spaces, overcrowding, operating efficiency, and maintenance. Our 5th place overall rank was due to receiving 0 points for financial issues. When we consider the long list of issues, and I won't go into all of them today, we can focus on 3 main areas: failing structures and systems, lack of adequate space, and safety, especially the proximity to 3A. First is the building itself. While necessary repairs to HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and mechanical systems have been made over the last 20 years, it's increasingly evident that the Band-Aids and workarounds are no longer sufficient. Floors, windows, and doors need replacement, and GMS is one of the least efficient schools in the state, costing taxpayers high amounts in energy costs. So I don't know how visible the pictures are, but the first one is a crack in one of the first grade classroom walls. The second one is no insulation. There's minimal insulation under the roof, no insulation at all between any of the exterior walls and the inside of the classroom, which results in higher energy costs. Any rainy day, we'll see large trash bins set up in hallways to catch dropping water from roof leaks. And the last picture, I believe, is a trash can set up by a window catching snow melt leaking from the outside, from on the roof of the building. These are just a sample of some of the pictures that we've collected from inside the building and things teachers are dealing with on a daily basis. The second problem is lack of space. GMS currently houses the highest population of students since the last time a new facility was proposed in 2008, right? 18 years ago. 6 classrooms are located in temporary portable classrooms. There's no dedicated space for staff teams to collaborate, as shown in the first picture. This is a team having a meeting in the gym. Special services are provided in cramped shared classrooms, formal closets, alcoves, or in the hallway. Preschool is in a room designed as a middle school science lab. Enrollment at GMS has plateaued and is projected to increase in the next 5 to 10 years. We simply do not have any space to grow, even to add one more classroom. The third major concern is the proximity of the school to 3A and the impact on safety during the beginning and the end of the day. Because GMS sits on the southern triangle of the property, the families dropping off or picking up students must line up on 3A, often past Anna Lane, nearing Pinecrest. Through traffic must negotiate around lines of cars, turning into the car lane from the north and the south. Buses enter through the exit to park on the school playground in the afternoons to pick up students, requiring admins and staff to double as traffic controllers while ensuring our students are safe. All of these concerns will be addressed with the new building proposed. Our teachers, staff, admins, and students deserve a building that supports their endeavors to provide a safe, healthy, warm, and inviting learning environment. They work hard every day to find creative ways to overcome the physical and operational challenges at GMS. That creativity and ingenuity should be focused on educating our children. I'd now like to invite Dan Mitchell, principal, up to explain the impact that the building, impact and limits the building has placed on our teachers, students, and staff.
Thank you. Stormy Weather by Ethel Waters. Wear My Ring Around Your Neck by Elvis Presley. Surfing USA by the Beach Boys. Hey Jude by the Beatles. Tie a Yellow Ribbon Around the Old Oak Tree by Tony Orlando and Dawn. You're the One That I Want from the Grease soundtrack. And finally, Faithfully by Journey. This list is not just a list of great songs, but also represents the song of the year for each editions that bring us to what we know of as today's Griffin Memorial School. With these songs, we hearken back to days of youth, or for many of us, days before birth. Like those songs, they bring back memories and speak to a different time. But also like GMS, they are classics. The deficiencies of the current Griffin Memorial School are well known and recognized by anyone who has been inside GMS, driven by GMS, or paid attention to the conversation of the last 15 plus years. While we can continue to debate these deficiencies individually, what is not in question is that something needs to be done about Griffin Memorial School. Everyone agrees on that. Today, we bring forward a bond for your consideration for a new elementary school on existing school district land. A new school was last presented to the voters in 2008 for a cost of $22.2 million. That article failed, and the district has been performing the necessary upkeep to maintain the status quo of operations. The reality is the building is now another 16 years old, another 16 years of wear and tear. And as Mr. Cutter said at the last Budget Committee meeting, the time is now, and we must do better. Plenty of time has been spent on the issues at GMS, and more time will be spent between now and March 12th. But today I want to spend this time talking about what better is and what better looks like. To start, I'd like to go back a few years. With voter support through approved warrant articles, back in the summer of 2021, a process was begun to identify an architect that could lead us through this project. After a full and exhaustive request for proposal process, Kyle Barker of Barker & Associates was selected. At Kyle's urging, we then went through a process to determine options that the town should pursue, initially coming up with 5 options. Feedback was received, community forums were had, and considerations were made to lead to the conclusion that a new school on a new site was the best option moving forward. Work began to find new land, and a plot was found. In the meantime, another process took place to select a construction manager for the project. Again, a request for proposal was set forth, and 4 firms that met our qualifications were interviewed and considered, and in the end, Bonnet, Page, and Stone were selected. Kyle then investigated an additional 4 options, including consolidating to 2 schools. In total, 9 different options were investigated and considered. While the purchase and sale of the land that was voter approved in March of 2023 fell through, the work and team was already in place to identify other options and to achieve the agreed upon goal of a new elementary school on a suitable site. I mention this all in order to dispel any notions that this project was rushed, that due diligence hasn't been done, that time hasn't been taken, and that those involved have been selected in any manner other than the highest regard. Now we find ourselves in this moment, a moment where we can determine our future for our school, for this town. It's a future where students can learn in classrooms that are adequately sized, where all students can fit in one building with no need for movement outside of the building to access services, specials, or lunch, where the community has additional gathering space for meetings, activities, recreation, and recreation, where students and staff can learn and work in a healthy environment free of moisture, mold, leaks, and mildew, where road traffic doesn't present an imminent threat to safety, where students are able to receive the support services they need close to their classroom so learning time doesn't need to be lost to travel, where our dedicated support staff do not need to fit 5 or 6 to a room, leaving little to no space for students, where staff are able to use their endless wells of creativity on teaching and learning and not on utilizing the limited space they have been given, where decisions and choices are made based on learning and growth and not facility availability, where hallways are used for travel and not for learning, where stages are for performances and not storage or supported learning. A future where all the energy and creativity that currently goes into making GMS function and GMS students safe and comfortable can be put into making our students in school truly thrive. I do not, and no one on this stage takes this question lightly. We recognize the impact that this will have on all. We know that this is a big ask, both financially and historically. While voters will have much to consider, please remember that the ones who this will impact the most, the lives that will be affected the most by this vote are children, and they don't have a vote. I ask that you do it for them. Do it for our staff, do it for our families, and do it for the future of the town. We can't afford not to. The time is now, and we must do better. Thank you. Now, if you're interested in seeing what we're talking about, just to explain, for anyone who has looked at the feasibility study that we did, one of the options was build a new school on existing land. And we identified the deficiencies in that. It was not unsuitable. However, also, when we looked at it, we were looking at a different part of the existing land. We've now identified a part of land which we currently call the baseball field. So you can see the bottom structure is the current GMS, and where we're looking to locate the new elementary school would be behind it on what is currently the baseball field. The layout of the school would have basically, I will say, and Kyle may fix this, but it ends up being 3 sections. We'll get to the second floor. On the first floor, you will have a community access area, which would also be school, that is then joined by the administrative kind of hub. And then you have 2 academic wings. The layout of these academic wings, what they allow for is classes to be close together, but also not necessarily in a line. Because when you look at it and you have, 4 first grades in a line, the space between the first fourth grade and the fourth first grade don't allow for that collaboration. We can square them together. This allows, as you can see, sections of classrooms, and then the core of the building is where you put your support services as well as most of your unified arts. It basically creates an equidistant situation that all students are equally distant, no matter what their needs are, from getting those needs met. By having that community act, you can see off of the gym, there'd be a community entrance. So that off hours, that gym, and even to some extent, the library media center could be used as community space without going into the educational learning spaces. And then you have your second floor, which again, is your 3rd and 4th grade wing. That way we have our physically smallest learners on the first floor without having to navigate stairs. Your oldest 3 and 4 would be on the 2nd floor. This is a general layout of the building. You'll notice that it's abutted against a tree line, but still allows for a crucial emergency access road to go all the way around the building so that road access can go to any part of the building for emergency purposes. You'll also notice how far it is off of 3A, allowing, while we're not going to reduce the number of cars coming to GMS, we can reduce the number that are stacked up on 3A. They can actually be on property, and we can separate, finally, our buses from our cars. And that's just a pretty picture. Thank you.
As Dan mentioned, initially we reviewed 5 options. So the first option was do nothing and repair things as we go along, as we've been doing for the last 20 years. The second option was performing renovations and additions to GMS. We considered a new school on the current site, but as Dan said, not in this current location on the baseball field. A new school on the upper plateau near LMS, and a new school in a new location. In summer of '22, the board voted 5-0 to pursue new land for a new school. A parcel became available, so we pursued it, and in March of '23, voters approved the purchase, endorsing new school at the new location. In the spring of 2023, the board funded study of consolidation options. It was raised as a concern at our last deliberative session, and we felt that as a board we needed to study that option as well. In that process, we studied consolidating 7 through 12 at CHS and pre-K to 6 at LMS. Both of those projects would require extensive additions and renovations at LMS and CHS. The need to retrofit LMS for younger student population. LMS was built as a middle school. Younger students have different requirements than middle school students. Classroom sizes, distances to, as Mr. Mitchell mentioned, unified arts and the central location, the central portion of the building. And all of that would need to be considered, including a sizable addition to house all of our students from pre-K to 6. That would make it the second largest elementary school in New Hampshire with about 700 students. Not to mention all of the current problems with the LMS site. There's really no room to build on there, and there's currently no secondary egress for emergency situations. A secondary egress would have to be built in order to facilitate the arrival and departure of 700 students on any given day. The project would span a long time. It would be a multi-phase project, multi-year project, and it would impact all students in our district at all buildings for the length of the project. So in June of 2023, after careful review, the board committed 5-0 to building a new school. Before we go on to how we pay for a new school, I just wanted to add too, recently a community member, Ron O'Blenis, who's here today, came forward, and although we had studied the option of renovations and additions at GMS, felt that the depth of that study hadn't been communicated well enough. So with the help of Mr. O'Blenis and Kyle Barker, our architect, we revisited the renovation addition issues. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but what it came down to is in order to renovate and add on to the current building, the price difference was about a 3% price differential for the initial cost of capital cost. Over the life cycle of a renovated building, at about 18 years, renovations and additions actually becomes more expensive for our taxpayers. And so we present to you today the proposal for a new building on the GMS site. So I'll have Mr. Cutter come forward with how we pay for a new school.
Good morning. So how do we pay for a new school? A new school is expensive. The board looked at multiple options in terms of financing exactly how we would pay for such a large project and a large-scale project. One of the sources for bonds in the state is an agency called New Hampshire Bond Bank, which allows us to bond our project with other projects happening across the state for better and more compelling interest rates at a savings to the taxpayers. So our estimates and projections that we're putting forth in the warrant article are based upon bond bank projections, which we're going to showcase here in a minute. Additionally, and as Moderator Perry read, this is very contingent upon state building aid. And we're going to get into state building aid on the next slide here. Our calculations and everything that we're putting forth to you today is assuming 80% of what we believe we will receive from state building aid. The other 20% is not guaranteed, but we will receive it should the new building meet all of the criteria within our application to the state for the building aid. So the 80% is paid up front, the 20% is paid upon project completion. So in order to be fiscally responsible and smart, we don't want to calculate or assume we're receiving that 20%. We want to receive that at the end and then potentially use that to offset the payments for the bond itself. So in terms of state aid, it's really important to note that the wordy warrant article does include a contingency. The board felt really important that this is critical for the success and for the town. And the language is the last sentence of the warrant article that I want to highlight. The article is contingent on the award of state building aid, and if such aid is not awarded to the district, this article will be null and void. What does that mean? It means should we not receive state building aid, which we don't think is a likely scenario at all, but should we not receive that state building aid, we are not moving forward with a new school, period. The state building aid maximum that Litchfield is eligible to receive is $7,090,164. The 80% calculation of that is $5,672,131. This is the number, the $5 million is used in our calculations as it's paid up front should the warrant be approved. The 20%, or $1,418,033, again, is not used in our calculations as it's not guaranteed, but the building will meet the new, the state aid application, all the criteria within that. Therefore, the 20% is highly probable to be received upon project completion. In terms of the bond bank, the numbers that we present to you today are a point in time, right? If anyone's watching the news, as we are very closely, it's projected that bond rates will continue to decline over the course of the year at a slow pace. Our estimates and all the numbers that are presented to you today are underneath our estimated rate column. So 3% for 5 years, 3.15% for 10 years, and 3.5% for 20 years. The middle column, the January 2024 sale rate, represents actual rates that the bond bank put out in January. Note that they're less than our projections, right? So interest, should we move forward, will already be less than what we're presenting to you today because of declining interest rates. In terms of how we want to fund this, we want to be able to do this in a multiple bond capacity, using the rates at the time when we need the capital to be able to build the project at these specific times. So we're envisioning essentially a 4-tier bond structure in which there'll be a pre-construction bond for $2.15 million. The biggest part of the bond is the construction bond for 20 years, or $34,043,870. The equipment that goes into the building will be bonded at $1.963 million, and then the final year with the final payment of $453,000. So what we've done here is we've added it up, right, and you have the total costs for each bond phased over a period of time, right? So it's not a big bang approach, it's phased over a gradual period of time, meaning that the tax rate will be gradual over a period of time. And we have some details here on that I'm going to showcase here momentarily as well. The board looked at multiple options, many different scenarios on how best to fund this for the town. In comparison to the conventional way of funding these types of projects, a 30-year loan at 4% rate, that would result in a total cost to the district of $62,730,270. So if we were to take out one bond, 30 years, all in, it would cost $62,730,000. By taking a multiple year, multiple bond approach and phased approach, and grabbing the money from the bond bank when we need it at critical times during our project, we're not paying interest on all the bond because we don't have that money yet, right? We're paying it as we take and borrow the bond from the bond bank. That approach significantly reduces interest that the taxpayers will have to pay. That savings projected is $10,777,310, meaning that the total cost of the project to the taxpayers using the multiple year approach for a multiple bond approach is $51,952,965. So what you see in the Warrant article is the principal, right? What I'm presenting to you here is principal plus interest on that bond. And again, the key here is funding the project at the right times and only when funding is needed to fund the next stage of the project. So what does this mean for you and I, right? We're all taxpayers too, and again, this is expensive for all of us. The school fiscal year that we're moving into is fiscal year 2025. The tax rate per thousand is highlighted on the right-hand side of the column. You will note that in years 3 and 4 specifically, we have a spike, and then it starts to gradually decline as more money is paid to principal. It reduces our payments that we owe back to the bond bank. So there's definitely a spike that happens in year 3 or 4. And again, this is where I was mentioning it's gradual, it's not a big bang approach, and it allows us to ease into the higher payments and then slowly reduce the payments as time goes on. It's also important to note that the bond is a 20-year bond, right? So we don't want 25, or we're not interested in 25 years or 30 years because that just further increases the amount of interest that we're paying back to the bond bank. And those scenarios simply didn't make sense based upon the tax impact and the amount of money that the town would owe. So again, what does it mean for you and I? We've put some projections here based upon assessed values of the homes in town. Left column is assessed at $250,000. Then we have assessed at $300,000, all the way up to $400,000 in these scenarios. And again, in years 3 and 4 is when it does spike, right? So should the article pass, it does mean in year 2028, using the highest year in the models, that you could be paying anywhere from $800 to $1,300 or more, depending upon your assessed value of your home, should this pass. Again, we don't take it lightly. We know this project is expensive, but the cost of doing nothing is far greater than moving forward at this time. With that, I will turn it over to Member Shoemaker, who will go through some additional slides. Thank you.
And I promise we're almost done with slides, because I'm sure you're probably wondering how many more there are. So I am not one for plagiarism, so I'm going to credit Mr. Cutter with the time is now, because he said that at a recent budget committee meeting, but we really want to highlight this. The time is now. We need to do better for our students. We need to do better for our faculty and staff, and we need to do better for our town. Doing better for our students we need facilities that are healthier and safer. Health and safety is not a luxury. It's not a wouldn't it be nice. It's a necessity. And it's a liability to the town. We are lucky that we haven't sustained any liabilities for things as of yet. But if we do, that impacts the taxpayers as well. If we get sued, that's a tax impact for everybody, and one that's not predictable. What we're trying to do is create some predictability by addressing these things head on. We really need facilities that are suited to education. We cannot effectively deliver education to students in undersized classrooms, hallways, closets, backstages surrounded by boxes, right? We need to produce students that are going to go out into the world and make a difference, and it's really, really hard to do that when you don't give them adequate buildings. We also have a legal obligation to deliver education and educational services, some of those services are not effectively being delivered. Our educators are reporting that to us. They're having trouble doing that, and that is also a legal liability. You can and may get sued if you can't do those things. We need to consider those things because at some point that liability could become a reality. Doing better for our faculty and staff is just as important. We need the people that work in our district to continue working in our district, or we're gonna have kids running rampant through the streets because they won't be at school. You know, just like with kids, we have potential employer liability. If we have substandard working conditions, it's only a matter of time. If someone gets hurt or gets sick because of the buildings that we're putting them in, we are going to be liable, and we as the taxpayers are going to pay for that. It's also, these deficiencies are just making it really hard for them to do their jobs. They're not maintenance workers, but every day they're acting as maintenance workers. And they're reporting to us that the low staffing and poor physical layout is making it hard for them to actually supervise children, and that is concerning. The reality is, I think all of us are either employed or have been employed at some point, and I think everyone can agree that you deserve a reasonable level of comfort and cleanliness in a workplace. I don't think many of us would stay in a place for very long if it was not a great situation to walk into every day. You know, we need temperature regulation. I mean, people are freezing at different times of the year. They need to be free from mold and mildew. It's just vermin, birds falling from the ceiling in the middle of a workday. Like that's terrifying, right? You shouldn't be dealing with that at work. And the reality is they don't have to deal with that at work. There are plenty of other jobs that they can go get. They can go to other districts. They can go to other types of industries. And we're seeing that. We're having those staffing issues. That's a problem in education as it is. And we need to try to reduce that impact in our town, or else we are going to be even more understaffed than we already are. The fact of the matter is we have to remember is even though we're taxpayers and we vote on what we're going to pay them and you know what we're going to offer them for benefits and stuff, they're not indentured servants. They don't have to stay here, and they won't stay here. So we need to take that into consideration. And most importantly, we need to look at this as a town and do better for ourselves, right? As Andrew said, we all pay taxes. I'll be honest with you, I'm not super thrilled to have my tax bill go up either. But as we've covered, piecemeal solutions have led us to where we are today. We can't keep making the same mistakes. At some point, we have to look to the future and say, how are we going to stop the cycle of the ebbs and flows of the taxes? How are we going to, we just need to do the right thing at one point. If we had done that in 2008, we'd be nearing the end of a 20-year bond at this point, right? We didn't, and now it's double the cost. It's only going to continue to go up. So, you know, given the unpredictability of future state aid and increasing construction costs, which we've seen year over year, I don't know anyone that's ever said, hey, guess what, construction costs are so much lower than they were in the past. You can't try to build a house right now. It's ridiculous. There's no cheap way out of the problem. I understand that if you're faced with a big tax bill, it's really easy to say, I'll just vote no, and it'll go away. But this problem is not going to go away. We have very, very aging structures and systems at that school. We are going to be spending large sums of money to put into an obsolete building to try to fix them. And at what cost? We're not going to recoup that. We're going to end up having to do something at some point anyways. And we're really desperately trying as a board to avoid that. We don't want to waste more taxpayer money. And as Tina mentioned, this school is so inefficient. So we're just wasting money in utilities. We have vetted the alternative options. I know that there's some thought that, well, you just vote no on this and it'll just result in a renovation. That renovation option is not, we've looked at it thoroughly. Mr. O'Blenis can attest to that. You're looking at a $37 million renovation. At what point do you say, okay, is it worth saving a couple $1 million to have something that doesn't address all of the issues? If we don't end up with state aid, it's the same cost. So it just does not make sense. We're trying to pursue an option that's going to set the town up for long-term success. So please, just to sum it up, if we fail to act, it's going to be costly regardless. Saying no thanks, we still have to do something. We have to figure something out, and there is no cheap option. I think we're gonna just finish up. We do have Kyle Barker from Barker Architects and Keith McBay from Bonnet Page and Stone, our architect and construction manager here. We recognize that after this very long presentation, you probably will have some questions. If they are related to anything that relates to the construction or architecture, they are here to answer questions as well. I think is that the last slide? So with that, I think we are able to open it up for questions.
All right. So the presentation of that article was about 50 minutes long. That might be the longest presentation I've ever seen. Let's make sure that we do this in an orderly fashion. We're going to open this up to questions, comments. Please direct me, and I'll make sure that you get your answers by seeking out an answer from somebody that can state it. Mr. Bohm?
Thank you. This on? Yes. Good. Hi, I'm Ralph Bohm, 6 Hipton Drive, also state rep. I just have a question on the financing, because Litchfield is going to get, if other school districts do not put in a bond, which I understand they're not, 30%. Now, 30% is not 5 million. So what is your finance on for the 5 million? Because I look at it, 30% of 38 million is 11 million, or 9 million with the 80% of it. So where are you coming out with the only getting 5 million? It should be 9 million for the 80% if it's on the 38 million.
Do we want Mr. Cutter, Mr.?
We're going to have Mr. Barker come up and answer that question, as he completed our building aid application, and so we think he is the best person, or we'll have him answer it right there. That's okay.
Why don't you enter the stage?
Why don't you come on up?
The state building aid has certain thresholds and limitations on the funding, and so they go through a fairly complex mathematical equation to come up with what is actually presented. Most schools don't get the full 30% or 40%, whatever they're allotted. And part of that is due to the fact that they don't actually even determine the full amount until the end of the project. And so the cost for construction is capped at what the RS means data index indicates, and that's set at the time construction is completed. So that's why we were saying that the 20% that we get at the end is not guaranteed, because if inflation goes down, then we won't get that full 20%. It's unlikely that inflation is, that the cost of construction is going to go down from here. So I feel fairly confident that you will get the full 7 million. So the 7 million was based on 30% of the original price that was put in when we put in the building aid application last year. And the final number won't be determined until construction is complete.
So question then, could we still get more, or is it still based on last year's?
No, the cap of the 7 million was set at the time that we put in the building aid application.
Okay. Thank you.
Carrie Douglas, 9 Pheasant Street. I'm actually at this point not speaking to the actual plan itself, because I've been very open and honest about my opinion of that. But I do have a question regarding the financing. Is it possible, I understand this is a bond warrant, legal counsel, to adjust the first year's payment to 2.2 million so that we don't have to take the first bond for 5 years and save the taxpayers an additional $215,000? Since that is actually the more reflective annual payment. So rather than have the low introductory rate, let's just jump right into what it's going to cost the taxpayers, which would also save $200,000 of interest. Is it possible to make an adjustment to this from the floor? I just don't know if it's legal, if it's possible to make an adjustment as a taxpayer to a bond article. I would like to make a motion to increase the first year's payment. Is that legal?
Counsel?
I can, sorry. It's gonna take me a minute. There were a lot of slides. You can go ahead and answer while I get us there.
Oh, that's all right. I think you got a lot, long presentation, but very, very informative. I want to make sure I understand the question. The question is, can you adjust, can you make an amendment to the bond article?
So the bond article reads that to further raise and appropriate the sum of $53,950 for the first year's bond payment. I would like to submit an amendment that would raise that number to $2.2 million, thus reducing the need for the first 5-year bond, saving $200,000 in interest, and making the first year's payment more reflective of the annual expenses going forward. I just don't know if I can legally submit an amendment to a bond article.
Yes, you can.
Then I would like to do so.
You can submit an amendment to the bond article. What I want to make sure of, that you realize, is how that, the language of that for those purposes. Because if you're just amending the amount of the first year's payment on the bond, that is not what you're planning on doing, if I'm not mistaken. You know, it isn't really a payment on the bond, because you wouldn't be issuing a bond of 36 million, or authorizing that, you know.
I think she's wanting to reduce the first bond altogether.
I would like, in essence, it eliminates the need for the first 5-year bond, because you're raising 200, according to it, was it 2.15 for the first 5 years that you would like to bond over 5 years at a cost of $215,000 worth of interest. If, however, we look at the annual payment schedule, our annual payments are in excess of $2 million. Let's just raise the first $2 million, and then you're still authorized to proceed with the rest of the bond.
You can do so.
Okay.
My point is, you just need to make sure we get the wording right.
I'm just, my only adjustment is to, on that, and finally raise and appropriate the additional sum of $2.2 million for the first year's payment on the bond. That's all I'm asking. Can I do that?
Yes, you can do that. Yeah. I think that's the point, right? You need to then reduce the amount of the bond.
Yeah, so we checked with both our legal on this. We have Goran Graham here. We also have bond counsel here as well. So we believe that that can happen. And what that would change would be 2 numbers. The one thing that can't happen is we can't change the $44,290,000.
I'm not asking to.
Yep, and I'm just kind of talking to everybody at that. So what we would do, we would change the 38,600,000, and we'd reduce that by 2.158 for the loan, and as well as we'd change what we'd be raising in taxes.
Excellent. That's all ultimately my goal would be saving an additional amount of money. We're still it's similar payment schedule, and it's an opportunity to save additional money on the excellent work the school board's
So it would
already
be
done
bond
in
and
trying to reduce the
project.
amount.
First year's payment on the bond.
All right, so
project.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to
Right.
read
Yeah.
in,
So we have one further addition, because it says for the first year's payment on the bond, it would have to be
First year's payment.
first year's
Payment.
payment.
I can strike payment on the bond if you'd like. I have a
Either that or say bond and project.
But however you'd like me to do it,
I'd like that so that you.
bond
cover
and
the-
project.
Bond and project, all right? That was my only point. I just wanted to make sure we got the wording right. Because you can do what you want to do. That's the point.
thank you. Okay, so I'm going to read the amendment in. This is a proposed amendment by Ms. Douglas. The,
I'm sorry to make you have to reread the whole thing. If the only thing that's changed, would you like me to read it?
so, The change is the end, which is, and finally, to raise and appropriate the additional sum of 2.2 million for the first year's payment on the bond and the project. So the question that I'm gonna have for council here is, doesn't all the changes in Article 1 need to be represented in this amendment?
Yes, you'd have to change the bond amount by reducing it by the $2 million.
Do you want me to do that? Is that? So if only we'd had this way in advance, I could have been adequately prepared.
Come on, you can even use this one.
So
I don't care.
how about a little help?
I want to make sure we get this right, because there's a lot here that can get confused real easy.
That's the point. You do need to, you need to reduce that by, the amendment should be to reduce the bond amount, right, Doug? By $2.2 million, so. Oh, boy, well, I'm not doing that math.
Can we motion to table this until later? This feels like a long conversation, and I think there's a lot of
I'm sorry,
people
we
that
already
want
have
to
an
talk.
amendment on the floor. The amendment has to be acted on.
Okay, understood.
70? Thanks. So that would be to reduce it to that amount, and then the bottom line here would be exactly how much? 2.2, and that's to 2.2? Is this the 2.2 down here? Yeah, that's 2.2. 2.2 for the bond and for the first year's payment on the bond and for the project.
Ms. Douglas, if that's your
So it
motion,
would be to
right?
reduce the bond amount.
If that's going to be the
36,459,870.
amended motion,
The intent
And it
is
would be
to,
replace
yes.
this
I get
with
you, right? We
$2.2
should do
million
it for
the first year's payment on the
2.158 and not
bond and for the
2.2. We
project.
don't want to overtax the taxpayers.
If that would make
Hold
you
on,
more
hold on,
comfortable,
hold on,
absolutely,
hold
but
on,
it
hold
all
on.
comes down to the end.
Hold on. We're trying to fix this convolution right here.
You tell me, you put the numbers in. I'm not the numbers again, but.
The amendment that was proposed is 2.2. The amendment that's on the floor is for 2.2.
She should carry. I'd revise it and do 2. Carry.
You gave me the number.
This opens it up to a whole new problem.
I understand, but it's legal. I mean, they can do this.
That's the total bond amount right there. 459,870. That's the total bond amount.
Correct.
That's from this one.
I subtracted 2.158 from that. Right?
So then this number then is 2.158 plus 53,950.
Because there's no.
Oh, okay, so 2.158.
So it's to raise and appropriate 2.158.
So it should be just for the first year's payment on the project.
Correct. Yeah, and no bond, right? You should remove the word. Yeah, payment on the project.
Payment on the bond and for the project, that'll be fine. Cover both justification. Well,
Yes, you do need the new tax rate.
Mr. Speaker, can we motion to table this?
well, you don't
No.
need to change that. It's not part of
5%,
that.
5% people?
Unfortunately, I
hold
think
on.
they need to get the numbers.
All right, we
right.
need order, please. I understand that this is a
Right.
big mess and we have to work our way through it, but we need everybody to stay in order, okay?
Can we continue discussions
That's the
on
point.
the
She's trying to
exhibit?
No,
create
we
disorder.
cannot table it because
I'm
it's
not,
already on the
I'm
floor.
trying to create, no,
Oh, your tone says
ultimately,
different, but okay.
for all intents and purposes, this question was emailed to the school board prior to the initial bond hearing, so the fact that they chose not to move forward with this, I'm sorry, but this isn't the most fiscally responsible way of moving forward.
This is what I'm doing. 2.158,
2.158, got it.
and that's the new number up top.
Bond and for,
So I gotta read the whole thing back in to make sure that we don't have a problem.
yeah.
And we're gonna read
You're gonna change that number?
Just to clarify that statement
We
on
get rid
behalf
of
of
the
the
word
board.
bond and just go
Well,
into
thank you.
project,
Thank you
correct?
for allowing me the
Or is it
opportunity to
bond and
speak.
project?
Right. So we did actually clarify this with legal counsel and bond counsel. Right? The board feels it's actually irresponsible to do this because of the impact to the taxpayers immediately, which is what you're trying to do. So,
I am trying to so realistically, we are taking advantage of the fact that taxpayers will be receiving a refund when they return
Okay.
of money from this last prior year's sale
When,
purchase.
when,
Now is the
when
time.
we go through this correctly, we can then open the floor so that you can discuss the reason why you want to make this change. Okay? So, the amendment that is presented now will make Article 1 read, buckle down, this is going to take a minute. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $44,290,000 to fund the design, construction, original equipping, and related costs of the new Litchfield Elementary School on school district land near the current Griffin Memorial School, with $36,459,870 of the sum to be raised by the issuance of bonds or notes in compliance with the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33-1, as amended, with such bonds and notes to be issued in phases over multiple years and amounts to be determined by the school board, which amounts shall not in the aggregate exceed $38,617,870. Sorry, that's $36,459,870, with the amount of $5,672,130 of such sum to come from state building aid. To authorize the school board to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver said bonds and notes, and to determine rather the rate of interest thereon and the maturity of other terms thereof, to authorize the school board to apply for, obtain, accept, and expend federal or state aid, including state building aid or other aid, if any, which may be available for said project, to authorize the school board to take another action or to pass any other vote relative thereto, and finally, to raise and appropriate the additional sum of $2.158 million for the first year's payment on the bond and for the project. This article is contingent on the award of state building aid, and if such aid is not awarded to the district, the article will be null and void. 3/5 ballot vote required to approve this article. That is the amendment.
Thank you.
So I now need a second to the amendment before Ms. Douglas can state her case. We have multiple seconds on the floor, so Ms. Douglas, please, now
So,
give the dialogue.
Absolutely. Speaking only to the financial aspect of this project. That's it. I obviously have an opinion on the other part, but the finance. Bonding over 5 years, the amount that will become essentially the average payment is irresponsible. It will cost this town an additional $215,000 in interest. This year, the taxpayers will receive, $500,000 in return from this land purchase that failed last year. As a result, we will be seeing a decrease in our taxes. If we are going to see a substantial increase as a result of this project, why not this year, when we can offset a significant portion of that impact by this one-time reduction? If the hope is to create an on-ramp for this project, we are taking advantage of that reduction and in creating said on-ramp in a very responsible way that reduces taxpayer impact in excess of $200,000. Just think what this town could do with that money in a way that doesn't involve paying some bank an extra $200,000. Thank you.
Questions or comments on the amendment? Yes.
Janet Gee, 7 Century Lane. I've been in the Litchfield school system for 22 years. I'm a resident for 37 years. We lived in a mobile home on Horseshoe Drive in Litchfield for 13 years. My 3 children graduated from here 2008, 2010, 2012, living in a mobile home, and they're very successful. They're very smart. They're all in finance. We lived in a mobile home. We had very little payments, very little taxes, so I could be a stay-at-home mom. people think that I'm a monitor or a kitchen lady, but I'm very well educated. My children are very well educated. I chose to stay home with them because of the world and the way it is today. I do not approve of this money. I think it's great for the future, but not today, not tomorrow. I agree with Kerry spoke so well. I have buckets in my home. We have a 20, I don't know how old it is, 1982 we bought it. We're not in the rich part of Litchfield. We're in a little acre lot. Yeah, that's nice, but it's also old. It needs work. I need insulation. I need a roof. I got buckets. I got a wood stove. I keep warm by that. I put my buckets.
Can we keep this pertaining to the amendment?
Okay, sorry, but it is personal because I work here too. So the amendment, I say no. I'd say yes to Kerry's, but no to the future. Yes, maybe in 2 years. Yes, maybe even in 5 years. But not today, not tomorrow. I don't want my taxes going up. I don't want my neighbors' taxes going up. People want to stay here. They want to retire here. Or they want to bring new families in here and raise them and stay home with them. People are forced to work to support these big houses. I worked in the after-school program and took care of these kids. They're awesome. I believe in the kids. I love the kids. I had the Ames, the Cutters. I love them. They know me. Please, please, do this for the kids, yes. And the future, yes, they are the future. And there's another song, Mr. Mitchell, Toby Mac.
Okay, so I hate to cut you off, but I have to in interest of time. Yes.
Hi.
Again,
Joe.
we are talking about the amendment only
Absolutely.
right now, please. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Joe Jositis, 29 Brighton Street. My question is actually for the Budget Committee on this amendment. There's a 5-4 vote there. Will any of you change your vote based on this amendment? Especially Mrs. Douglas. I'd like to hear from her.
You can start. You're already down there. Well, you can either, yeah, actually, you have to come up. Because now you're as a budget committee member.
All right, so the reality is, I have an opinion on this project. Regardless of whether I believe this is the correct project or not, I believe that this is the correct move. If this project passes, whether the community believes it to be the way to go, I think we should, regardless of my personal opinion on it, we should do it in a way that is most financially sound. I think it's unfortunate that you'd consider what my vote may be. Yeah, I don't think this is the right project. Quite frankly, I don't. But I am advocating on behalf of the taxpayers to that if this project passes, that it passes in a way that is fiscally sound. Regardless of my personal opinion on it, I'm stuck paying for the taxes for it, and may as well be the right amount.
Mr. Moderator, may I interject on behalf of the school board?
Well, right now, we have a question that was directed at the Budget Committee, so we
For
want
all the, okay.
we want to let
By-
them
by all
answer.
means.
I'm certainly not going to speak on behalf of everybody. I'll tell you I voted in favor of the project, and if, should this amendment pass today, I will still vote in favor of the project.
Anybody else from the Budget Committee wishing to speak their opinion? That is the answers they've chosen to give. Mr. Shoemaker.
So I just want to clarify the board's position on this. You know, Ms. Douglas makes one viewpoint on what's fiscally responsible. The approach that we were taking on this and the way that we were looking at this was the fact that if you're doing this as a renovation to your own personal home, right, paying less interest makes the most sense. From a municipal standpoint, when you spread things out over a bond, you're spreading it out over more taxpayers. So for better or worse, everyone knows that there are multiple building projects going on in town, right? In the next 5 years, they will be taxpayers as well. So we will be spreading out costs over them as well. If you are someone who's thinking about being in this town maybe for 3 years, you're gonna pay more this year if we do this. This is not an attempt at diverting the cost to hide it from you. And as Ms. Douglas pointed out, there is a savings this year from the money being given back to you for the land, right? We made a point to make sure that was coming back. That is one strategy. We don't agree with that strategy because we are trying to spread this out over more taxpayers to reduce the impact to the taxpayers this year. And also with the fact that we know that there are a lot of things on this warrant, right? We put this before you this year because of the potential state aid. We want you to be able to vote on that and have the benefit of the state aid, and we don't want to crush you with the tax bill in the first year.
Okay.
And
now
also,
back-
I'd just like to point out that there is not full budget committee representation tonight if they do revote.
Back to the questions on the floor. Ma'am, I believe you were first.
Thank you. I'm Carolyn Bogart, 15 Center Street. I am just about the warrant article. Before I can ask my question, I need to know what happened to the $1.9 million that was overspent a couple of years ago, and has that been resolved?
That does not pertain to the amendment which is on the floor right
It actually
right now.
does, and I'll explain why. Because the amendment on the floor is, I've lost my place. Could you tell me what the, this is hard. This is very hard. I have
How about you
notes
move
on
to the back of the line and then maybe you'll remember by then.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. The problem with the $500,000 or the savings that we would get is the fact that didn't the taxpayers agree to buy the land? And the fact that they're getting that money back, aren't they expecting that? Can we just take that money and use it for a bond payment when the money that we already don't know what happened to the $2 million, that's why it's relevant. Now we're going to take $5 million or $500,000, whatever that number was, it doesn't matter. The point is that the taxpayers were told they were going to get it back. Can you just take that money and spend it on something else?
Mr. Cutter is going to answer this question.
Yeah, look, it's a great question. Thank you for asking. Article 2 will cover off the budget, the operating budget for the school, which we'll get to next. You're going to see that in the operating budget, there's a negative estimated tax impact. And the reason for that negative is because we're returning the $500,000 of the land through the budget process, which is the only way we're allowed to do so. We're not able to repurpose that money for something else. It has to go back to the taxpayers.
So we can't do the amendment.
The $500,000 for the land that was voter approved last year is what's being returned.
Right, well, then we can't use that to make a bond payment.
No, we cannot use that to make a bond payment.
So that was being proposed.
No. No.
Okay. Next question.
Hi, Maureen Halligan, 11 Center Street. I may have already got the answer to my question. I see the slide was updated. So instead of the .04 tax impact the first year, with the amendment, it's 1.78. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay, so what about the following years? Does this amendment change any of the other amounts for the following years? And can we see that slide updated as well?
It will slightly, I know that.
We'll take that and try and update that now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now,
Well, to answer that, yes, it should, in that it would pull out the bond payment for the first several years.
Right.
So the first several years would see a reduction compared to what is there.
next question. Please, let's just make sure, I keep reminding everybody, this is pertaining to the amendment.
Yeah, John Latcher, 10 McElwain Drive, Litchfield. I'd just like to ask the attorney, is there a requirement to have the building aid in this warrant article a legal requirement? Because I've seen articles, actually one in Derry doesn't have any, and they're below us, the building aid. They're going to be next. They don't have that in their warrant article. I just wonder, is it a legal requirement to have that in there?
Ms. Ames, do you have an answer for that? Anybody else?
Where's the attorney? Can he come up here and talk about it?
Is there a legal requirement to have building?
Excuse me, can you come up to the microphone?
To confirm your question, because I don't think.
Excuse me, I'd like him to come up to the microphone, please.
I want to confirm your question first, sir,
He
so he
can't
can
hear
hear
it?
it. He did not hear
I'll
it.
tell him to come up to the microphone, I'll tell him.
You can repeat your question.
Excuse me, Mrs. Ames, but please be respectful.
You're the one being rude right now. Please step back and
Yeah.
repeat your question.
Okay. I'm going to repeat my question
Go
right
ahead.
now.
John,
Fine.
just to be clear, you're supposed to direct all your questions to me,
Right.
okay?
All right. Thank you,
So-
Mr. Chairman.
So let's not have dialogue back and forth with people at the podiums.
Fair enough.
Thank
Fair
you.
enough. Okay. Once again, my question is, Mr. Moderator, which you can ask the attorney. Is it a requirement to have a legal requirement to have the building aid money in this particular warrant article? Because most towns that I've seen, the most recent one in Derry doesn't have it at all, and they're on the list for building aid behind us. And my second question is, I just forgot my train of thought here.
Well, we can
We'll
let them
do the
answer the
first one.
question.
Yep.
There's no requirement to have
Okay.
building aid in the article.
Okay, now the thing is with me, in my opinion, is I think that the school district is using that as leverage, okay, to lower the price of the article, so the average voter sees the reduction. So actually, we could take that out of that article if we wanted to, correct?
You could,
Because-
and you could take out the contingency that the article won't pass if there's no building aid. You know, that would be what you do. But why, you know, you could do, yes, you could take building aid out of the article.
Right.
Right. Well, I'm just using it as, I know that they can do that, but I'm using that as the average voter that's not here today, which are many, that are just going to quickly read that article, and they already have the building aid money in there, which they're using actually as leverage, because there's no guarantee on that figure. So I'm asking you again, sir,
Well,
how,
John, I think
How
I
can
can
you-
answer that for you, because
All right.
there is a guarantee on that, because if they don't get the building aid, the project can't go forward.
Right.
That's as the last statement says.
right, that's it, right,
So
right, right.
that should answer that question.
I'm just using my opinion as far as the voters that aren't here that will look at this article where they have the building aid in there, which there is a considerable reduction of $5 million.
Right, but it's also at the
Right.
bottom that
Yeah.
says clearly that
Most
the
people
article
don't
will be
read the
null
whole
and void.
thing, so that's my
Well, I
opinion.
hope.
But
Next
Mr.
question.
Moderator, to clarify, if the building aid does not come through, we can't move forward with the project. So I think that that's the important thing. This is not a, hey, we're asking for building aid, and if we don't get it, we still get to spend $44 million. If the building aid fails, there is no moving forward with the project. So that contingency is good for the taxpayer. You wouldn't want to remove, in my opinion, you wouldn't want to remove that.
Okay, now, next question pertaining to the amendment,
Well,
please.
pertaining to answering his question, state rep is not required, and why Derry doesn't put it on theirs is because they know they're not going to get any, but they still need the school. But yes, this is necessary for help our school district. And like I said, I don't know why it's not higher, because I'm bending on the money, and I will follow up with the Board of Education on that, because I think we should be getting more. But yeah, it's a leverage, but if we don't get it, we don't pass it. So, yeah, and other school districts are doing it without that because they know they're not going to get any.
Thank you, Mr. Bohm. I'm sorry, I actually let him go in front of you.
My name's Bill Fleming. I'm at 36 Brickyard Drive. It's sort of a comment and a question here. The financially sound thing to do would be to have this building built 15 years ago. That's the financially sound thing to do. So, that's what should have happened many years ago. What we're dealing with now is the decisions we had in the past. So, ultimately, this is obviously an article that has been massaged as much as freaking possible to get it on. It's going to take up a full page in March because of how many addendums are already added to it. Adding another, making a vote today, whatever addendum we add to it, especially without the full budget committee here, I think, especially we're talking about $200,000 over a 5-year period based on whatever bond ladder that we have set up. And who knows what the next bond is going to be. More than likely, with lowering interest rates over these next couple of years here, the next bond's going to be lower interest, as we saw in another slide of the many that we saw. There was our projected ideal, which was around 3%, I believe, and the lowering of it was around considering January 2024 was around 2.75 to 2.65. So next will be a lower bond. My question ultimately with this addendum, since our money that we're saving cannot be sent to that, there's no reason that we can do it. Two, it would be illegal for us to do it because of going to the operating budget. All that money is going to be reallocated to the operating budget, not for this. It's not a, we have a savings, yes, but it's not going to be applied to this, period. Two, what are we, if we add an addendum today, we all have to re-vote on this in order to adjust the information. We have to vote on this, and then the budget committee will be putting in their vote as well today, correct?
I would assume the budget committee would re-vote any proposed amendments to warrant articles that change dollar values.
And if their change in amendment, in their change in vote, that will be reflected on the bottom of that?
On election day, yes.
On election day as well. Okay, I guess this was more of a statement. Thank you, moderator, for answering my questions as much as I need it. But guys, we gotta do something. I got 2 kids. I got 1 kid that's gonna be going into Griffin Memorial School, and I don't want leaky crap on his head. Like, I mean, is that too much to ask? So let's just do something. So I don't want this amendment, is my ultimate statement here.
Okay.
Let's get something done. Get this on the article. Let's get rid of this amendment. Let's vote no on whatever this amendment is going to be. Thank you. That's it.
Okay. So again, we need to stick to the amendment. We actually haven't actually voted on the amendment to change this article yet, okay? Because everybody starts by saying that they want to do that, but then they go off on a tangent about the meat of the article. We're only trying to work on the change in the numbers to this article. So please, any further questions be only about the change in numbers on this article.
Okay, Mr. Moderator.
You
Janet
cannot do
Gee,
that from the audience.
Mrs. Gee, Janet Gee, I'll speak directly to you. So I vote no for this amendment right now. It might be good in the future. And just to direct that amendment, no.
Okay. Sir.
William Zayas, 27 Weatherstone Road. Mr. Moderator, I guess just a quick comment. Thank you for being here. It seems like it's getting a little out of control, so if you could please do your best to keep it. I know you're trying. I'm off. Related to the numbers and the bonds, it sounds like that it was really in our best interest as taxpayers and for everyone here to increase the amount of taxpayers that would be here in a few years and actually kick the bond down the road, right? And my understanding that was why the board, or that was the decision that was made there, right? So that laddering actually is allowing us to come up with, I think it was about $10 million in savings that was presented from that. So it seems to me that that's actually the financially sound thing to do. And JP Morgan actually is forecasting that the Fed funds rate is actually going to go down quite significantly by 2026, down to about the 2 to 3% range. So I mean, there's a lot of evidence that's saying that that is the most financially sound, and I actually trust Mr. Cutter that there was a lot of due diligence done there. So for us to actually go and change a lot of the due diligence that this board has done, and I know you've had plenty of time to speak your mind, so I think there's a big attempt right now just to sabotage and really take away everyone's time, and I hope that we can do better. Thank you.
Rhina Pettit, 132 Page Road. I oppose this amendment because it's amending a warrant article that's recommended by the Budget Committee and by the school board, and I think we should stand by both of them. Thank you.
I think you're going to find.
Hi, Ronald Blanders, 15 Riverview Circle. I'd like to call the question, please.
Thank you.
I'm just going to address, I'm not trying to sabotage.
We have now had a call to question to bring the amendment to a vote, okay? So we are only voting on the amendment. This does not do anything but change the numbers as I read the next time. All of those in favor of this amendment to warrant Article 1, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The noes have it.
Carrie Douglas, 49 Pheasant Street. Thank you for the vote. I will say I take slight offense to the indication or implication that I'm trying to sabotage this. I am not. I am not. I actually sent my comments as a budget committee member prior to with a full thing and had a school board member say it was a good idea. So
Hold on. We are not going to have people screaming from the audience. I am really starting to get sick of it, okay?
I'm just, to be
We
clear.
need to make sure this stays in proper
It was
order.
in no way, in shape, and form an attempt to sabotage this. I had no idea that we were not going to have a full budget committee to be able to revote it. I honestly believe that saving $200,000 in interest for the taxpayers was a good idea. I'm sorry not everybody agrees.
Okay, next question, ma'am.
I don't know how to object to taking yays and nays vocally, but we didn't scream as loudly with yay as they did with nay. I mean, I don't know how to do, but that vote was not equal. People were speaking at different volumes.
All right, so the clerk has presented to me the fact that some people may have spoke when they shouldn't have spoke, so we need to redo the vote on the amendment, okay? We're going to do this by a show of hands, okay? All of those not in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. All of those in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. We have 21. I could tell you it's going to fail. All those that are not in favor of the amendment, not in favor of it, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 52, 54, 56, 58, 60, 62. So the amendment fails. Back to just talking about Article 1 now, as it was originally presented.
Okay, still Mrs. Gee, 7 Century Lane. I just want to address that a lot of this was decided during COVID. And COVID, you can't base the finances during COVID time. Our refrigerators, our kitchens were overstocked. Our CHS was a holding house, and everything was distributed from there. And people came in and made judgments that we had all this food, but it was because of COVID. We didn't just store up food for ourselves. We've used Campbell for many things. It's a great auditorium for Finding Nemo. Any meeting you want to have, we're more than happy.
Excuse me, but we need to make sure that we stay on this article. This is about a new school.
Right.
So why,
Well, let me get to that, please.
when
Okay.
it's supposed to be less than 2 minutes to speak,
All right.
just so you know.
All right, I'll go faster then. So I don't want a new school right now, okay? I believe it's a great idea in the future, but not right now, period.
Yes, sir.
Good day. Ronald Blinas, 15 Riverview Circle. A couple of the school board members mentioned that I had spoken to them beginning back in November about questions I had about the new school. And so, particularly when the land issue was taken away from us, the options for building on a new site and revisited building on existing. So I became involved. Some of you may have seen, if you watch some of the budget committee meetings or school committees or even the facilities improvement. And if you noticed where I began with that process was challenging, had we looked at options thoroughly. I did a lot of homework on myself, asked a lot of questions. I think I actually challenged some of the folks to rethink things. And as a result of that, I gained a lot of information myself. So I want to speak to quickly my reasons for supporting the school, where initially I came into the process thinking that a renovation would be the best option. The reasons that I support the school as presented today, the warrant article as presented, is really I want to focus not so much on the building conditions. I had the opportunity, Dan Mitchell, Dan's up back, to tour GMS and speak to people there, observe the conditions myself, and really was talking to the educators there and listening to their needs of how a new school would actually improve the education opportunities that really convinced me that a new school is in their interest. Some of the particulars that I ran into is the special services group, and that's focused on helping kids that need some tutorial services, either in advanced or dealing with particular things in a particular coursework. They don't have any space. They're all crammed into a former classroom. There's about 5 people there. So there's no ability to work with individual students. The intervention people that help with kids that have problems in class are housed with a nursing, as a for instance. And that affects how they can supervise and respond to them. The portables, as mentioned, creates a number of disadvantages of moving back and forth during the day. And also the comfort within the rooms was evident. So it's really the educational disruptions that convinced me that a new school was best. The building conditions have been talked about. There's no question that something needs to be done with those. Heating and ventilation, insulation, and windows and roof that are leaking are all the major issues that have to be addressed if this is not passed. The other side of it is looking at the opportunity. I think the time is now what's been presented. I would agree with that. I would state that looking at it, this represents the lowest cost opportunity that we'll ever see. The state aid is available to us this year. Looking forward, I've listened, and then somebody can verify this. In the foreseeable next couple of years, there won't be any state aid available to us. So it is, if we want to take advantage of state aid, it's this year. Also, the one thing that I pushed for an issue is making the bond pushed out to a point where we take advantage of the likely lowering of interest rates. I'm appreciative of the board responding to that and creating this tiered bond approach, which actually does save us a lot of money. The $10 million is real. And that was a response. I hope to, I won't say hope to, but it dealt with my question of how do we take advantage of that in the next coming years. And then finally, one of the things I want to highlight is Kyle here from Barker Associates. One of the things I wanted to be sure of in standing here is that the sum up there is $44,290,000. We don't exceed that. I don't want to come back and stand and have these debates that it's going over that. Both Kyle and the construction manager have assured us and put their reputation on the line that they are confident that it will come in under that price. So based upon that, I'm not looking forward to having any further discussions. If it's approved, we have a high level of confidence that the project will go forward.
All right, I have to cut you off.
Okay.
It's been far beyond the 2 to 3 minutes that we're supposed to allow per person. So if you have more to say, you can move to the back of the line and say it after. Yes.
Good afternoon, Joan McKibben, 2 Whittemore Drive. Couple questions. What is the capacity now of Griffin School? And understanding that we have a lot of building projects going on, what is the capacity of the new school?
Ms. Ames?
We're going to have Mr. Mitchell, our school principal, come up and answer that question for you.
The short answer is that currently we are over capacity because the presence of the 6 portables tells us that the core building doesn't fit the class size. If our population projections are correct for next year, meaning we get enough the kindergartners enrolling that we think we're going to get based on birth rates, we're actually short a classroom, and so we'll be looking at creatively utilizing another space to turn into the classroom. So we're already actually over capacity just by the presence of the 6 portables. And then even with that, next year we project to be 1 traditional classroom short.
What's the capacity of the new building?
The new building would meet the capacity, the exact student population. What we would end up having is 9 classroom spaces per pair of grades. So for instance, right now, we currently have 5 kindergartens, 4 first grades, 5 second grades, 4 third grades, and 4 fourth
Can
grades.
you just give me a total number of capacity of the new building?
600. Right now, we're at 450.
Thank you. And then.
I made that too complicated, I apologize.
I didn't want to have to add it, stand here. My other question, moderator, is on the new building, I'm familiar with the site, and I'm also familiar with building construction. Would the building be built up? I'm sure it would have under drains and sealant on the foundation, but would it be built up at a level, because the groundwater is high there also?
I'm going to defer to our architect Kyle or one of our representatives from Bonnet Pages. So I don't know if I can defer, but I was at the mic.
Short answer is yes. The ball field where it's located is a higher elevation than the current GMS facility. And we've got wetlands mapping, we've got geotechnical reports, with the civil engineer has studied the site to make sure that it's viable and that it can fit where we're proposing it, and that we do plan on putting under drains underneath the foundation in order to deal with any kind of high water table.
Because there is groundwater, high groundwater right at that tree line, a lot of groundwater.
Yeah, we've got quite a few borings in that location, so we do know that, and we're working on designs that will take care of that. In fact, I'm working with the same contractor on a different site that has very similar conditions, and we've been able to deal with that.
Do you feel that the building would have to be raised up at all? With fill?
Likely, yes. Not significantly, not like it's on stilts or something. We're talking just a foot or two.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Okay, ma'am?
Brenda French, 1 Morrill Street, resident for 30 years, first time up here. I don't like to get up in front of people and talk.
I don't
so
either.
This is passionate for me. I'm not against the school. I think it's probably high time we got a grade school. My kids went to grade school there. They graduated from this school. I was part of, supporting this school as well. So, couple things. I know you talked about the number of kids, but you didn't actually talk about the number of kids. You talked about the number of classrooms. What is the current student count per school? What is the projected? And are you taking into consideration a large number of families that are choosing homeschooling and private charter schools as public schools seem to be pushing agendas instead of academics? And can you promise, if we do this, we are not going to be pushing things onto our kids that have nothing to do with academics?
So the first part of your question, our current enrollment is at 450. We've seen a steady increase. Our enrollment projection for next year is to require over 80 kindergartners, which requires 5 kindergarten classes.
And that's based on birth rate, right? Not actual things. I mean, kindergarten, hopefully nothing's being pushed on.
Yeah, we project that next year we'll be at 460. And if you could restate the second part of your question?
I would like some promises that if we do say yes to this, that this promise would be, we're done with the indoctrination of our young students. And you laugh about it, but it's true, and we're sick of it. Yep. I'm telling you. Yep. So can you promise us?
Well, it doesn't happen now, so I can assure that it won't happen in the future as well.
Okay, well, it did.
Okay.
It did a couple years ago, so I don't know if you were here.
All right, we have to move on. Next question.
Hi, Mr. Moderator, I just wanted to say
Please state your name and address for the record.
Janet, 7 Century Lane. So I wanted to ask Mr. Mitchell, could I speak to him?
You can ask, yeah.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Hi. So we work together.
Yes.
Pretty closely. You've been in our kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
You've been in all the classrooms. The portables are awesome. They have AC. They're not hot in the summer, and in the warm weather, they're really nice and toasty. The kids get to go outside from the portables, walk on the sidewalk, and get some exercise to come into the lunchroom. That's kind of cool for kindergarten.
What's the question here?
Question is, why do we need this now? I don't understand, because I am there, I live there, I work there. It's a wonderful place. The staff is incredible. The teachers do their best. It's an incredible place to work and live. Why now?
It is absolutely an incredible place to work, and we have a fantastic community made up of students, staff, families, and community support. And yes, you are correct. Our nicest learning facilities are our portables. I'm just going to let that statement sit there for a second. Now, our portables are housed by our kindergarten students, and there are a couple of kindergarten teachers in here that can tell you that during these months, the amount of lost learning time to bundle them up to go outside is lost learning time. And yes, it's nice to get them fresh air. However, every time they exit those portables, they're exposed to any threat that could be on the outside. So every time they need to have lunch, anytime they need to go for special, anytime they need to access the building, they are exposing themselves to the outside. Ideally, and I don't think this is a question, ideally, all of your students in your building are housed in one single facility. So to answer your question, that's why now is the time.
Okay, next question.
Carolyn Bogart, 15 Center Street. I do agree that the students deserve a safe and dry facility, and the staff deserves safe and dry. But I don't understand how consolidating into this school could cost more than $42 million, which was the implication on the slide earlier, that we didn't consolidate because eventually the cost would be greater than building a new building. And that doesn't make any sense to me. There's only 400 kids here approximately, only 80 in the graduating class, and you want us to spend $50 million on a new school because there's no other option. That doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
Just to be clear with facts, there are 114 students in our current graduating class, not 80. In terms of why consolidation wasn't an option, it was investigated thoroughly. During various processes, it was determined that the impact on the buildings, the enrollment increases, the cost of changing and retrofitting a high school to fit different sized children. There were multiple reasons why it was determined that a consolidation did not work, but I can assure you we did investigate it. We used Mr. Barker, we used our experts to tell us what the cost would be, and at this point, the recommendation from the school board and the budget committee is to move forward with a new school on the land proposed.
I understand that that's the conclusion that you came to. I just find the math very hard to believe, because for $42 or $52 million, you could put a lot of kids in here in luxury. It just isn't believable.
All I can say is I disagree with you. Okay. Our experts disagree with you, and we researched the option.
Okay.
All right, we have to move on. I'm sorry, you need to go to the back of the line.
Okay.
You were next. You were standing in line next. Please.
Can I have the construction, the person that's supposed to be building this school, can I have him come up to the podium, Mr. Moderator?
Mr. Moderator, can we have the question first before we determine who's going to answer it?
I want him to answer it.
I think we're going to let him ask his question, but it seems as though that this is going to be the appropriate person to answer it. So,
it might
John,
be.
please
Yep.
state your question.
Okay. A few years back, an alderman from Manchester on the Facilities Committee, I was reading the minutes, he said, quote, "We had nothing but trouble with Burnett, Page, and Stone. Right now, as far as I'm concerned, they're on the red list," unquote. Also, the engineer in Manchester talked about that Time stated that our relationship has been hot and cold with this firm. Even in your own town of Laconia, both the city council and the school board voted not to enter into a construction contract that would have your company, Burnett, Page, and Stone, oversee the entire operation for a guaranteed maximum price. Instead, the building committee chose to go out to bid for the project and have a general contractor do the work. Can you elaborate on that? And,
Sure.
do you have the trust, do you think that you have the trust of the voters of Litchfield?
Well, here's the thing. Let's save that one for the last part. Laconia, let's start with the latest. Laconia was a middle school, and we were hired to do the pre-construction work. Ultimately, they elected to go out to a competitive bid on that project. So that was a case of a change in theory. We're construction managers, and we chose not to bid that project. Manchester goes back before my time. That one, I believe, where there were some issues related to design and like that, and there were a lot of meetings. I can tell you that we stuck with it until everything in the building operated properly, and it took a little time, a little argument going from memory there. It was just design issues versus buildability issues, and we took care of everything there. As far as trust, I wouldn't trust anybody that told me they were an honest man. And we're committed to building schools. We build hundreds of schools. I appreciate that you found a couple of chinks in the armor there, but I have hundreds of schools behind me that we've built successfully, and even on the ones you've mentioned, we've performed well and left there with a good product.
Mr. Barry, can I ask the gentleman how many projects they're still doing in Manchester?
I don't know how Manchester has anything to do with ours.
I just wanted to ask.
All right, if that's your final
If
question,
he doesn't want to
sure.
ask it, that's fine.
Go ahead.
I just had one more quick question. I'd like to ask Selectman Leary what effect that this article will have on town services, if any.
Selectman Larry, do you care to answer that question? Yeah. Everybody's supposed to go there. I'm supposed to always have this so I can calm things down when they get a little crazy.
And you're asking me? Well, the biggest concern with this, to me, being the cost, obviously, is where we stand with our unassigned fund balance.
I think the question was based upon the town services, wasn't it?
Well, I guess it's all intertwined. We have to maintain town services regardless. You know this being a former selectman. So we have to carry a fund balance. We're going to have to increase that dramatically in case something ever happened. We still have to pay the school their money because the teachers need to get paid. We still need to pay police, road plowing, things like that. I am concerned where we're going to go with it. So what effect immediately? I don't know. I really couldn't answer that. It's just if something happens and we don't have the money to cover it, then there's a big issue.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Appreciate it. Yep.
I believe this one was next.
All three, yep.
All three?
All three of them are
Oh,
having. Yep.
okay, perfect, thank you.
Yep.
Faye Oblinas, 15 Riverview Circle. About 4 months ago, Ron and I started talking about this issue as it was coming up. We're both fiscal conservatives. He came at it from an engineering point of view. He has a professional engineer's license in 3 countries, has done major projects. I came at it from an educator's point of view, master's degree in education. And so we began researching what the issue was, all the things that go with it. He came at it from engineering, I from education. And over the 4 months, talking about it every day, mostly, we've been persuaded that this is the right thing for our town, for our children, for our futures, for our property values. We don't talk about that much, but our property values are increased by our education system. And so I believe that this is the best solution for our educational system in this town and for our town as a whole. So thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
And she debated whether she was going to come today. She doesn't like conflict like a lot of people don't. And let me just finish the thoughts I had and just kind of wrap up that I do support the project as it is proposed. If we don't do this, we have still the lingering question, the resolution. But equally important, I want to highlight that the distraction that this has caused over the number of years, I think has really hurt the town in general, and particularly the school board. They spend an inordinate amount of time on this question. We have a new superintendent coming in. I would like to have this behind us, so to speak, even though we're in building. I would like to have the issue resolved. I would like to have, going forward, the focus on education. I started my rationalization saying this needs to be done for education. I think the project needs to be done so that we can focus entirely on education going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brianna McLean. I live on Colonial Drive. I think that we should have already started this project personally. I have 2 kids. One of them is in the portables, and it is terrifying having him go from the school back to the portable, vice versa, not knowing who's out there and being so close to the road. I think it's a little crazy that you guys don't understand that this is an unsafe and unhealthy building for our children to be in. My kids could very well get sick if their immune system is compromised. I do have a question though. I understand that like there's, you know, things being put into place to control the mold situation, but when my son is in that school and he does start to get sick because, you know, flu season and all that stuff, are there going to be some sort of machines or anything to like help keep the school from being so moist and so moldy all the time?
Are you talking about the current school or the?
Yes, the current school.
So the
because
current
this isn't going to happen overnight.
Yeah, so the current school, when we have any sort of viral outbreak, we'll attack the room with antibacterial, you know, Lysol sprays.
Well, I'm
spray
asking
guns.
about the mold.
And in terms of the mold, basically we mitigate it as best as we can, utilizing usually large industrial fans. So if you come on one of the hot, humid days, there's.
Point of order. Can you please stick to the article, please? Thank you.
I'll take
You're talking about other towns,
finish.
Bud, okay?
I'm sorry, hold on. Please finish what you were saying. It's addressing the issue with this school that is under discussion.
Absolutely. So to mitigate humidity and moisture issues, usually when you have a high humidity day at the beginning and end of the school year, we utilize the usually large industrial floor fans, which may help mitigate the moisture, but then also have an educational impact because those bad boys are loud and we got about 8 of them running throughout the building.
Yep.
So
okay.
that's the best answer I can go.
Thanks.
Okay, sir.
William Zayas, 27 Weatherstone Road. There's been a lot of people coming up talking. I believe we're supposed to be talking about the article that's on the screen at the moment.
Some of the responses are very loosely associated.
I think we've had many prior deliberative sessions about whether a school was the right thing, whether we should be doing other things, what's the right thing for our kids, right? All of that. All of that aside, there's too many people talking about personal conspiracy theories, personal opinions, and personal histories. This is about the article. Can we motion to end the debate, please? Is there a second?
So there's a motion to call the question.
Thank you.
Is there a second to that? Second. There is many seconds. So with that, that's it. There's no question to be had because the article is as presented.
Exactly.
So that ends debate.
We have to vote on that.
You don't have to.
Yes, you do.
All right. Do we want to vote to call the question? All those in favor of calling the question, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed to calling the question?
No.
No.
Ayes have it.
Mr. Moderator, I do have one question.
It can't pertain to this.
No, can I just ask you to confirm that the line that says Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33:1, is what was on the original article? Because I believe that was not in the original article, and I don't remember that language being passed as an amendment.
It's in what I read.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration on this article.
We have a motion to restrict reconsideration. Do we have a second?
Second.
Call that to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? We have now restricted reconsideration. Article 1 will be on the ballot as presented. We are now moving on to Article 2. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by the vote at the first session for the purpose set forth herein, totaling $26,243,939. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $26,032,315, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous actions of the Litchfield School District or by law. Or the school board may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 4013 X and XVI to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Majority vote required. The operating budget estimated tax impact per thousand is a reduction of 19 cents. The default budget estimated tax impact per thousand is a reduction of 36 cents. This is recommended by the school board by a vote of 5-0-0. This is recommended by the budget committee by a vote of 7-2-0. This, we have Mr. Cutter, who is going to start the speaking.
Thank you, Moderator Perry. I have Chairman Sun up here with me too. I'm going to cover a couple of slides from the perspective of the school board, and Chairman Sun will certainly cover off some slides here on the perspective of the budget committee. As mentioned earlier, Article 2 and why it's a reduction in taxes is specifically related to the $500,000 in land purchase that is being returned to the taxpayer this year. That's coming out of our operating budget, and that return is resulting in the negative that you see here. General fund major drivers that we worked through as a board this year. Our special education out-of-district tuition has increased $336,000. Special education transportation has increased $190,000. We had a 6.2% increase in health insurance across the board for our district employees, which is just under $200,000 of an increase. Special education professional services, $137,000 increase, and a regular education transportation. We actually have a new contract in place with First Student. That resulted in an increase of $40,500 for the year. So that's a lot of the why the budget has increased. Now, in terms of decreases, the school board went through several sessions in the October timeframe, and we made some hard decisions and reductions to our budget. One of which is back to the bus contract in First Student. Currently today we have 9 buses serving the town of Litchfield. We were actually reducing that by a bus for a savings of $80,132. That'll take effect next year. Health insurance. We budgeted actually much higher than the 6.2% for insurance, and it actually came in less than our projections, and so that was reduced by $90,000. The budget committee, or excuse me, the school board also took a $150,000 reduction in salaries due to attrition. Staff leaving, staff coming in at different salaries, different steps in our pay schedules, right? That results in a savings to the taxpayers, and the school board took a $150,000 reduction on that. Special education transportation, we reduced $80,000, as well as out-of-district tuition, $67,000. There's several line items for special education. Across multiple items, there was a further reduction of $23,000. In addition to that, for some energy costs, for propane and oil, due to a reduction in rates and declining rates, we took a reduction of $17,800. And then some minor, smaller reductions within each of the buildings at GMS, LMS, and CHS. The total reductions that the board did approve totaled $489,876. That being said, we started off at a budget at $26,058,704, and the school board budget when it was handed over to the Budget Committee, was at $25,568,828. A couple of highlights also highlighted here on the right-hand side. There were some position changes, right? There was a CHS math position that was reduced overall from the budget. In addition to that, there was a need for a case manager at Griffin Memorial. We moved a case manager from Campbell to Griffin Memorial to meet that increased need. So a couple changes there and some reductions from the school board. I'll turn it over to Chair Sun for the Budget Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Cutter. Once the Budget Committee received the school board's recommended budget, we went through a process where we had an opportunity to ask questions of the school board's budget and then began our own process of recommending any cuts. As Mr. Cutter mentioned, the total school board budget that we received was $25,568,828. Additional cuts that the Budget Committee took over the course of our work included cuts to the Campbell High School ground service for $4,000, legal services for $10,000, special education district travel for $2,300, a bottom line reduction of special education for $51,800, salaries and benefits bottom line of $243,089, additional reductions of an IT tech position of $91,187, GMS mental health and counselor position of $104,187. And I want to speak on those two items quickly. We had a lot of conversation and discussion on those two items about being potentially new positions that were being added to staff, added to the budget. And that's where a lot of our debate centered as to whether several of us that supported those positions but saw whether the opportunity to bring those forward could come through a warrant article, which was kind of the way we left it for the school board to make that decision. And then the last was a correction that Mr. Totten brought to us, which was a double appropriation that had to do with food service, I believe, correct? Which was a reduction of $135,000. At that point in time, after the Budget Committee finished our work, we had total reductions of $641,563. That brought the budget to where it stands today for the general fund of $24,927,265. So a couple of things I want to highlight here. Mr. Perry alluded to this when reading the article. This slide shows in the middle column the operating budget, and then on the right-hand side, the default budget. Everything that we just spoke through and the reductions that we made were pertaining to the general fund, which is that first row underneath the headers. There's also two additional accounts that the school board and the school district utilize over the course of a year. The first is their food service fund, and you can see the difference between that and the operating, the difference between the operating and the default is approximately $42,000. The reason for that is in the default budget, you cannot account for anticipated increases in goods and services, such as food prices going up. And so because of that, the default budget is less as it pertains to food services because the default cannot calculate those anticipated food price increases. The third row there is for grants. These are funds that the school district receives both from the state and from the federal level, things like Title I funds and special education funds as well. When we add all of that up, you see the total there on the fourth row for both the operating and the default. So the operating was at $26,243,939, and the default, $26,032,315. The estimated tax rate impact on the operating budget per $1,000 is $13.77, and the estimated tax rate impact for the default would be $13.60. At this time, we'll entertain any comments or questions.
Floor is open to questions, comments. Go ahead.
Janet Gee, just one quick question. So the two that voted on the Budget Committee against this, I don't know you. Who are you? Against? Okay. It says 720, so there should be two. Why are there? Okay. So why did those two vote against it? I don't understand. It's the first time we had the whole school board agreeing. Thank you, school board.
We rarely have a unanimous vote on the budget committee, but I will say I voted no for a couple of reasons. One is the operating budget includes a significant increase in taxpayers' funding of programs that were intended to be self-funding. So currently, or the goal of, say, the lunch program, the food service program, is to be self-funded by the users of the system. It has been running in the red. And rather,
No, I work there. It's not running in the red.
well, it's,
Excuse me. Let
It
her
is.
answer the questions, please.
it is, and it will continue to do so. So what happens is, the school board and the budget committee had a discussion about whether or not those funds should be absorbed by the taxpayers to offset to a sizable amount. I believe that while that's an interesting discussion to have, I think it should be had at the town level. If we are going to move from a self-funded program to a taxpayer-funded program, I think the taxpayers should have a say. So I voted no because that's a substantial difference there. Additionally, there are a large number of unfilled positions.
Right.
And looking at the market, those positions likely are going to continue to remain in some magnitude unfilled.
Right.
So should we continue taxing residents for unfilled positions, knowing that that money will eventually be rolled into the general fund and likely funding other projects? So rather than have a conversation about actual staffing needs versus actual budgeting, I didn't feel comfortable with the number because I don't think it's an accurate reflection of the operating costs of the school, which if you look at how much is unspent every year, there will likely be a sizable amount returned. So rather than return it at the end, I don't feel we should take it to begin with. And so I voted no.
Well, I agree with that. Thank you. But there's
Hold
only
on,
two.
hold on. Would you like to answer as to why? Would you also like to answer as to why you
Yeah.
voted against it?
These are the two that I don't know.
How many people voted against it?
It says two on there.
The vote says 7-2. And we have
Right.
more people that are,
I believe you. Go ahead.
Hello again.
Hello.
I voted no because of a couple of reasons.
Excuse me,
Some
what's
that-
your name?
Bob Leary, I'm selectman. The reasons that Mrs. Douglas stated. Also, I believe that the reduction in the tax impact is artificial because they're taking the money from the warrant last year for the land purchase that goes into their general fund and they're removing that. So they don't have that 500,000 in there. So next year you'll see, because the budget was actually up, they had an increase in the budget. So it's not really a reduction, okay? And the third reason is new positions that have been brought in without getting the voters' approval. We don't do it on the town side. I won't vote for it, even though we're not required to. But there was a warrant article in town that said the school had to do that years ago, although it was changed to advisory, it's never been utilized. So I believe that the voters should always decide if somebody gets hired. Okay, they can listen to the professionals and the people that are working the pits, but they should have the ultimate say.
Oh, I
okay,
agree.
we're gonna move, hold on, we're gonna move on.
Okay.
You've already had a response from 2 people, it's been,
Okay.
you
well,
can go to the back of the line.
Two that were there didn't speak. 3 did, but not the Mr.
There's only 2 that voted against it as
Right.
far as it
So
says.
Mrs. Douglas got up, but I did not hear from, what's your name, Mr. O'Brien?
Excuse me, you don't have the right to do that.
Okay.
So please move to the back of the line. Ma'am.
My name is Amber Flint. I'm 123 Hillcrest. I just wanted to speak to, first off, I really appreciate the reductions this year because taxpayers are hurting badly. But I wanted to speak to the tax cuts for the special education. There are huge cuts. Huge. Our kids' IEPs are not being met right now. They're just not. We all know that. So when they are, sorry, I cry when I feel really powerful and really strongly about something. So special education kids need every opportunity and chance they can get. They are climbing their own Mount Everests every single day. And so when you take away anything from them, it is hurting them immensely. I am a part of a parents group that has been formed in this town, and we are trying to work with the schools to solve the multiple problems that are happening for the special education department. Please stop taking things away from those kids. There has to be another way to do it. I appreciate the budget cuts, but there just has to be another way to do it. So why, my question is why so many cuts to the special education department?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Flint. I appreciate your passion on this subject. I can tell you that when it comes to and I'll speak on the budget committee side and then let some from the school speak to theirs. When it comes to the special education budget, it is arguably the hardest line item that we have in the budget to review and to ask questions on and to make cuts on, simply because what the school district and the school board are tasked with doing is projecting the number of students that they're going to have to serve, and they're looking forward in a year when they don't know students that might move in and might move out. And that's a hard thing to do.
Yes.
None of them have a crystal ball. None of us have a crystal ball when it comes to that. What we're tasked with doing on the budget committee side is looking at historical figures and looking at over the last, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I can get them for you because I've asked for them in the past, is the amount of money that has been underspent in the special education fund over the last several years. And I always take that into consideration when looking at if we're returning a certain amount of money, that we're not dipping into that when it comes to cuts. And so I can tell you with cuts that we have made in the past, I can't speak for the current year that we're in, but for years in the past, cuts that we have made, we have still had money returned or underspent in that particular special education item.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yep.
Thank you.
From the school board perspective, the two cuts that were made on the, thank you, that were 3 cuts that were made on the school board side were authorized and supported by the Director of Student Services. It was based off of initially a projection for a student need that changed. And so those changes from the school board were supported by our director. And so those weren't meant to cut. I will say when it comes to the budget committee changes, there is a large salaries and benefit bottom line, the 243, that does not say special education, but a chunk of that are paraeducators that were reduced because they are unfilled positions.
Right. Okay. Okay, thank you.
I believe you're next. Oh,
I was going to speak.
I'd answered the question. Go ahead.
John Latcher, 10 McGowan Drive, Litchfield. Our town administrator, who has worked in many city governments and town governments, recently commented at a Board of Selectmen meeting. She said normal balance of distribution to schools go to around 60 to 65%. Did you see we are 72% education in this town? You're not investing in your town. Thank you.
Sir?
Hi, my name is Scott Scard, 10 Brandy Circle. I just want to speak on behalf of the teachers and some parents about school counseling at GMS. I know there was a line item on there that was cut, and GMS currently exceeds both the state and federal recommendations for the ratio of counselors to students. The American School Counselors Association recommends a ratio of 1 to 250 students. The New Hampshire DOE recommends a ratio of 1 to 400 students. The other schools in Litchfield, the ratio is 1 to 185 students, but GMS, you heard Mr. Mitchell talk about, there's 450 students in that school, and we have 1 school counselor. So that's a great disparity to our students, and the needs of our students that need those kind of school counseling services are not being met. I'm an assistant principal at an elementary school in Londonderry next door, and there's no way our school could run off 1 school counselor for those needs for our kids. The world's changed since COVID. The need for school counseling and those services offered by those people has greatly increased since that time. The middle school in town has 2 school counselors and 1 mental health counselor. Campbell High School has 2.5 school counselors and 1 mental health counselor. GMS has 1 school counselor and zero mental health counselors, and it has the highest student population in our town. We heard that there's 450 kids this year. Next year predictions by Mr. Mitchell told us a little bit ago is 460. We build the new school, that capacity is up to 600. We can't have one school counselor for all those kids. There are needs there. That person is spread way too thin and not being met. I would like to motion to add the line item back in for $104,187 for the purpose of a new school counselor at GMS.
Do you have that in writing to hand to me? Okay, so the amendment would increase the total amount to $26,348,126. And the motion is to add the sum of $104,187 back into the budget for the purpose of an additional school counselor at GMS. Do I have a second to that amendment? We have a motion and a second. Discussion on the amendment. Is there anything else you'd like to say about that?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay. Any questions or comments about the amendment?
Leanne Romano, 7 Country Lane. I have a quick question regarding counseling at schools. We have one at GMS, is that correct? Don't we use our health care to seek out counseling? I'm a proponent of having counseling. I have used it for my family, and I'm just wondering why we need to put this in the budget. I support the budget as it is. However you figured it out or whatever, and I just really I don't want this to fail by adding an extra million or whatever it is that you're adding.
Just to be clear, it's $104,187.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yes,
We're going to have Mr. Mitchell, GMS principal, come up and answer your question.
Okay.
Hi, could I just get a clarification of the question that you're asking?
So the question is, I mean, I'm pretty sure that people have health insurance, and if you need counseling, you can seek that.
Yes.
And I prefer to have my doctors separate from my school. No, yeah, I think the budget has been really thought through. However, you can, the townsfolk can vote for it or not, but I don't want to see it fail by seeing it go up.
Yeah. So I just want to, I'm going to answer and also clarify at the same time, because I think what you're talking about is psychiatric or psychological care, which is done through a mental health counselor. When it's medically based, there's the outside. We do have a school social worker, and she can oftentimes connect families up with others. I can tell you that the wait time of outside agencies is astronomical, so getting that service.
This won't remove her, though, right?
This will not remove her. What we're talking about is a mental
Adding
health
more.
counselor, school counselor position, which is that tier 1, tier 2, what we refer to, basically that site of service at school. This is running peer groups. This is running groups for new students, recently divorced, the things that happen in the school that impact their learning immediately. Right now, and she's right behind you, we have Mrs. Hayes. So Mrs. Hayes not only covers the student, I think she's probably going to talk about this, but not only does she cover the students that are in need, what she also does is classroom intervention. So she's going around and teaching lessons to every single student in the school. So often what comes out of that office affects all the students because there are aspects to school counseling that affect every student. This is where you get kind of your skills of interpersonal skills, of caring, of kindness. All those things are driven out of our school counseling office. So we're not talking about actual psychological or medically based psychological care with this position.
Aren't we already doing that, though, with our teachers? They're awesome. I mean,
We're doing it with one person. We're doing it with one person, with the school counselor, and then the teachers can take it on. But that's what you're asking is an additional burden onto the academics.
She's not going to be dumped.
No, we're gonna add another one of her. If we could clone her, that would be who I'd hire to fill the position.
I hate to see these these things go up and up and up in price. I understand. I just.
Yep, I want to.
Just quickly,
Yeah.
there has been a change in language in the last year or two. The school counselor is what we knew when we attended school as a guidance counselor.
Yeah, the
So,
Mrs. Ellis, the
again, this is all of
Jeff
our guidance
Parsons.
This isn't meant to be a mental health counselor or professional for the school. It's meant to be a guidance counselor who serves our students in a million different ways on a daily basis.
So it's guidance.
Correct.
Okay, now, next question, ma'am.
So I have a comment.
Question, sorry, state your name and address, please.
I am not a resident. I am the 1 to 450. I'm the one, school
Okay.
counselor at GMS. And I just wanted to kind of run through the typical day, just so people can understand what we do as school counselors. It is very different than clinical mental health counseling that you would receive in the community, and to understand where the gaps are, why we need a second person. And I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak today as a non-resident. So my day starts when students arrive. I perform check-in, check-outs. This is an evidence-based intervention that shows improvements in school engagement and academic performance. It's an intensive intervention that I provide to 6 students currently. We've identified an additional 4 students in our school that we're not able to service. I don't have the bandwidth. After check-in, check-outs are completed, there are classroom lessons, like Mr. Mitchell said. These are lessons that are focused on increasing student regulation skills, social skills, problem solving, bullying prevention. Hundreds of studies have shown that this helps with school functioning, measured by grades, test scores, attendance, homework completion. It also helps students have decreased emotional distress and positive attitudes about self and others, and fewer discipline problems, directly impacting the schools, the academics. I'm able to provide these valuable skill-building lessons to each classroom every 3 to 4 weeks. An additional counselor would allow us to be in more frequently, increasing that impact. Once morning lessons are complete, I have time to do check-ins with 1 to 2 students. These usually come from self-referrals from the students themselves. It might be a student that needs some support because they're grieving the loss of a grandparent, 2 friends that have had a conflict at recess and they want to talk it out with me, or maybe a student that's suffering from test anxiety and they have a big test coming up. They need some strategies. Once I do that, that usually takes kids, like they'll refer themselves, I get to them in 1 to 3 days. An additional school counselor would allow us to see them more quickly. At that point, we're at the lunch block. This is a key time of day when I can do small group counseling so that students can receive those services without missing academic time. Currently, we have about 60 students receiving school group counseling during that time. There are an additional 20 students that have been identified either through our SEL screeners, parent referral, or teacher referral. We're not able to see them. After lunch groups are done, there's time for 1 more lesson and then check-in, check-outs. In between all of that, there are parent consults, teacher consults, meetings, paperwork, lesson prep. Most of that happens outside of school hours. The turnaround time for all of that is less than ideal. With an additional counselor, there would be more time to consult with teachers, more time to push into classrooms to help with behavior support, more time to consult with parents to give them needed resources to support their children at home. And that schedule can be completely disrupted by a dysregulated student that needs my immediate support, a student in crisis, and yes, students in elementary school are in crisis. I need to be able to stop what I'm doing and assess them. I'm uniquely qualified to do that. When that happens, all those other services stop. Those students don't receive those services.
In
We
interest
need another.
In interest of time,
Yep,
please.
I'm wrapping up. We need more. We need to be able to provide these vital services for our students to be able to be academically successful and successful going forward in their life. I appreciate your support and your consideration.
Go
My
ahead.
name is Holly Neves. I live at 1 Jeff Lane, and I am a primary care provider. I take care of newborns all the way through the elderly, and I can tell you there is zero access for mental health care in this state. So while, yes, we are available for an immediate need, often if a child is struggling, that is to the ER for them to wait and make sure they're not suicidal. There is no follow-up that is actually available. There are no open beds. Often they're on wait lists for months on end. So the school is the first place that these kids reach out, and the first place where they're often found to have any sort of emotional need. We can provide medication as a primary care provider. That's not the answer. The counseling is the need, and there is little to no access available.
Thank you. Ms. Douglas is next.
All right. Carrie Douglas, 9 Pheasant Street. I have a couple things real quick. First, I actually do support this position. I do. I teach in a school with 650 students, and we have multiple guidance counselors. When a student is in a state of mental despair, they can go get help. They work together closely, they achieve strategies, it works, and it's amazing. So I am actually do support this position. A couple of concerns I have is, as I understand it, the Budget Committee as a whole supported this and encouraged the school board to bring forth a warrant article to that effect. If this position is so needed, why did the school board not elect to bring forward a specific warrant article? Because while this is a great idea, it will go to the bottom line. It is not necessarily guaranteed that it will go where we hope it goes. A warrant article would have been a better, more effective method.
Can I respond to the Mr. Moderator?
I was just going to ask if she was looking for a response or just making a
I
statement.
She's staring at us, so I'm going to assume she's looking for a
why
response.
the school board chose to not put such a needed resource on the ballot.
Then,
So-
Mrs. Shoemaker, if you could please answer that.
I'd be happy to. So there's a big conversation that's being had about what's appropriate to put on warrant articles versus what should be built into the budget. You as the voters have a say regardless, because you can vote down the budget, you can vote for a warrant article. As you all know, no means no. So if we put a warrant article out and we have a critical need and it's voted no, we can't do anything with that need. So here's the problem. Look around this room. Do you see 8,000 people in here? I don't, right? That's how many people roughly live in our town. This is our opportunity to educate the voters on what the need for these positions is. And that's a really heavy lift when you don't have access to the voters. We have televised meetings, we get 100 people that watch them, right? We discuss these things over and over again, but there's not a lot of voters that we're reaching with that information. So when it comes to time to vote in March, you're gonna see a warrant article. The voters that are not here, right? You're all gonna know what we're talking about. The voters that are not here are gonna see a warrant article, and they may just say, how did the Budget Committee vote for that? Or, which they may have voted in favor, but or you know, what's this going to impact my taxes? They may not have any context as to what the importance of the position is. And that's really, we're looking to have a conversation with the Board of Selectmen, with the Budget Committee, after we get through all this, to have a more definitive conversation about where the balance is between giving the taxpayers the right to dictate what positions are here, whether it's through warrant or whether it's through voting for the budget, because we can't adequately explain. Had you not just heard that whole description, right? I, as a school board member, would not have known everything that the health counselor would do, the mental health counselor or guidance counselor would do. That's the problem, that's the challenge. It's not always clear cut. It's not an attempt at hiding something from the voters. It's an attempt at trying to make sure that we have the opportunity to have people vote on what is actually needed. So that's the reason we did that.
So just a quick follow-up, just a different perspective on this now. I am actually going to have to vote no because I don't appreciate the process, even though I strongly believe that it would have passed on a warrant article. I understand the mental gymnastics that are going on over there, but I do believe that with the support of the Budget Committee as a taxpayer, that it would have passed. We talk about the importance. There was an open conversation. The taxpayers have that right to make that decision. Doing it this way, it's going to put people like me who believe in the position and the position of still having to vote no, even though we would have voted yes on that one. So I don't think it was a good strategy.
You do have the right to say, though, through voting, right? So you will still have the right
I don't
to
agree
say.
with the budget, so I have to vote no.
Correct.
And now I have to vote no for a position I actually believe in. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bill Fleming, 36 Brickyard Drive. I think it's a question ultimately, one, do we typically, if we're hiring a new guidance counselor, if we're hiring someone in administration, do we go to a warrant on that typically? That's one question that I would like answered. guidance counselor, mental health counseling, this is gonna be a problem for us for a while. We got 460, I expect Litchfield to keep growing. We got townhomes going in, we got a bunch of apartments going in. We're gonna get this strain on our school system over time. So I am in support of this amendment, one, because the 460 that we have now is just the beginning of the wave of crush of people that we're gonna be having in the future. We're probably gonna be getting up to that 500 mark fairly quickly. So we need to make sure that we provide the services, and hell, just having two, like I would love more, but we have to work with what we got and be ready and be proactive as opposed to reactive. So I really do support the amendment to be proactive on this so we can get someone in place, because I don't know what the socioeconomic status is of the individuals that will be coming in, but it might not be as good as everyone else. It might be worse than everyone else, and they need that help.
All right, so let's go, who wants to answer the first question as to if it was even talked about?
Would you mind restating that?
Yeah,
question, please?
the main question I'm having is, do we typically do a warrant article for individual positions within the school systems themselves?
So, and Mr. Shoemaker alluded to this. This has been, since I've been on the budget committee, this has been a conversation that we've had pretty much every year. We reference back to a 2003 advisory warrant article that was passed, and I don't have that language in front of me to read it word for word, but what it references is, do you have that? Oh, thank you. So, thank you, Ms. Ames. So this was a petition warrant article from March of 2003. As a community operating under Senate Bill 2, RSA 40:13, we support the Litchfield School Board creating separate warrant articles for new positions, increased hours of staff, new equipment, and architectural work. The Litchfield School Board will then be continuing past practice to provide voters with greater choice on increases in school spending. This is a petition warrant article. That article passed by a vote of 1,077 to 529. The following year, there was another article, March of 24, shall the Litchfield School District support the school board in placing in the operating budget those positions agreed to by the budget committee that are needed to meet the minimum state and federal standards or to maintain services at current levels. This is a non-binding advisory warrant article that passed by a vote of 1,073 to 921. So,
interesting. Okay.
So those two warrant articles, and we've heard from town legal, we've heard from school legal, they conflict with each other. As a budget committee, I think as a board of selectmen and as a school board, Mr. Shoemaker alluded to this, we need to sit down and come to an agreement as to how we take those advisory warrant articles into consideration. We haven't had that holistic discussion. I can tell you my perspective is, and this is in talking with people in town, not just my own personal opinion, is I follow the practice that was in place when I joined the budget committee, and I look at it if it is a new position that is increasing our overall FTE of staff, that it should go to warrant article. That's my current stance on that, okay? If we're moving positions around, a CHS math teacher is no longer needed due to students, and that is turned into a guidance counselor, that's a different take for me. And other people have differing opinions on that. Again, going back to those advisory warrant articles from 2003 and 2004. It's a messy, long answer to your question, messy because they seem to contradict each other a little bit, but those are what we take into consideration when we're looking at those new positions.
If I may.
No problem.
The other piece of the perspective is that oftentimes, specifically with kindergarten and first grade, we're often flopping between 4 and 5 depending on enrollment. Those changes are not brought to warrant. So if we go from an increase of 4 kindergarten teachers to 5 kindergarten teachers or 5 to 4, those are not included on as warrant articles, and thus far they have been approved, and it seems to be that that's okay. So from, and I guess I should say this from my perspective, we have a school counselor and we're having a second one, so it is not a brand new position.
Gotcha.
It is a second person in that position, but you can see how which warrant article, advisory article do you follow, why some believe it is a new position, why some do not believe it's a new position. From the school board perspective, we wanted the ability to be able to, if we had the funds, fund this position if we needed it next year. If we are legally obligated and by standards, as we're read, to fund the position, we wanted to be able to do so with other balances. We have a bottom line budget, and so if we had to pull from somewhere else to fund it, we at least have the ability to do that. If we put it as a separate warrant article and it failed, if the town said no, we didn't have the ability. No means no. And so that is why the school board, correct me if I'm wrong, the school board elected to not create a separate warrant article for this position and hope that someone kind in the audience might make a motion like they did today to be able to add it back in, because it was the school board's perspective and the budget sent to the budget committee that that position should be included. It was cut at the budget committee level.
Okay, so we're at an interesting legal area here.
Let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
Okay?
So I just wanted to make sure that it was sort of put out there why it's put this way as opposed to an individual warrant article, and that clears. I mean, it makes it clear as mud. But the main thing that you guys need to do, just as a citizen of Litchfield, you guys got to work on that language, man. Like we got to present an article with proper language in front of everything, so we're all working on the same page. Because it seems like both sides have genuine arguments, but you guys can't meet in the middle because one side's picking, well, I have this one that backs me up, and the other side's picking, well, I have this one that backs me up, and then no one moves anywhere.
And that was a discussion. Those were actually discussions about that potentially being a warrant article this year to clarify the conflicting warrant articles.
So
it didn't happen.
Keep doing that, please, God. Please keep doing that. Thank you.
Next question, Ms. Stevens.
Kate Stevens, 9 Evergreen Circle. I'm speaking as a resident because I'm also on the budget committee. I won't reiterate what Mr. Fleming said about needing policies around what is a new position and what is maintaining services. But I will say, as far as this particular position, the school board has the right to include these positions in the operating budget. And if this were a school nurse position, they should not be putting that to warrant, because that is for the safety and health of our students. That's something that they are charged with maintaining, and they should be supported in including a position like that in the operating budget. I would expect them to do what's best and hire those health professionals as necessary. This school counselor is a health professional. Speaking of health and safety, it's well known that the school shooting crisis in our country is largely a mental health issue. It's noted that this isn't a mental health position. However, this position is, as Mrs. Hayes pointed out, it reduces the emotional distress and increases student engagement, which are both clear indicators of healthy states of mind. Just as our school communities need entrances to remain locked at all times, we're concerned about our kindergartners that have to walk back and forth outside on the sidewalk every day, multiple times a day. We also need professionals to help identify and treat struggling students to protect our communities from within. This counselor position is something that is necessary for the safety and well-being of our students. It's not an increase to services. It's to bring our services to the standard levels that are required in both our policies, state policies, and federal policies. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy Ash, 5 Aaron Way. I'm speaking as parent and as a teacher. I've been a teacher at GMS 4th grade for 22 years, and I've seen a lot of changes, especially in the area of social, emotional, and counseling needs. 1 counselor 20 years ago was plenty. 2 now is not enough. So I am in full support of this amendment. Me personally needed to go see Ms. Hayes yesterday 2 or 3 times for students that aren't even legally required to have services from her, just to give you an idea of the need and how great it is. I took up a lot of her time yesterday. There needs to be so much more done for our students in order to reach them at this age, at the elementary age, so that they are not in need of so much more as these children get older. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Nicole Barrett, 53 Pilgrim Drive, and here as a resident. My son graduated in 2012. I've been a master's level social worker for 35 years working in child protection. And to be very concise, COVID alone has delayed children emotionally, developmentally, cognitively, in all the ways. And just for that alone, we really need this counselor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barker.
Derek Barker, 8 Simeon Lane. First off, I agree with everything Ms. Stevens said. I think she hit the nail on the head. The school board needs the latitude to make decisions like this. I'd go a step further and argue that this isn't even a new position. We used to have a guidance counselor and a school psychologist at GMS. All we're doing is bringing the level of service back to what it used to be. So.
Jeff Town, 14 Coco Kios Drive, call the question.
We have a motion to call a question. Second. Thank you. We have a second. Call us to a vote. All those in favor of calling the question, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. All right. So that is for the amendment to Article 2. So with that being said, Article 2, I'm sorry, the amendment for Article 2 is to add in the sum of $104,187 back into the budget for an additional school counselor at GMS. All of those in favor of that amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those that oppose that amendment, please say no. No. The ayes have it. The article is now amended. Yeah, they're different. So just to be clear, the dollar amounts on the screen, oh, they've changed. Nice job. I was just going to say they'll be different than they appear, but they won't. They got amended. So, so now we're back onto Article 2 as amended. Hopefully, there's not too much more dialogue. Go.
I'll be quick. Hopefully it'll be quick. I'm Amber Flint, 123 Hillcrest. I have been told as a parent for IEP students that there is not enough money in the budget. So with that being said, I would like to make a motion to add back in the special education bottom line of $51,800. And that's it. It's not all of the cuts, because I understand that there needed to be some cuts, but this is just the bottom line, just that line.
So I'm going to read this in, but after I read it in, could you please put this on a card? And you got to include your address too.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
So it's a motion to amend Article 2 to add $51,800 for the purpose of special education funding. Do I have a second to that amendment? Second. I have a motion and a second for the amendment. Do you wish to speak on the amendment any further?
I just feel like we have been told as parents that there is not enough funding for our children, and obviously there is. So we could use my friends, the parents of special need kids, need a lot more, and they're not getting it because they are being told that they don't have the money for it, and that is obviously not the case.
Okay. Any questions or comments about this amendment?
So, as a budget committee member, I look at past expenditures and the spending. So I would be curious, since this budget consistently runs under budget, there's consistently money left over, I'm curious as to why who in the school would be telling our parents that there is no money. There's an underspend every year. So it breaks my heart that you're being told this. And I think that means that we need to have a conversation at the school board level. If there are decisions being made when we're consistently underspending special ed, that makes me that makes me wonder, where's the money going then? If you're not getting it and you're being told it doesn't exist, I think that raises some questions.
That's from the very top. So I don't know what else to say.
Anyone from the public, question or comments on this amendment? Hearing none, we'll call this amendment to a vote. All those in favor of amending this additional, how much was the number? $51,800. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The noes have it. So we're back down to the regular article as amended the first time, which leaves the numbers
No, go ahead, I'm sorry. I just wanted to empathize here.
as on the screen now.
And to be clear, I would hope everybody here understands that the no is not that we don't believe you need the money. I believe it exists, and I think we need to find a way that it actually gets to you.
Hearing nothing else, we will now.
Back to the article?
Say that again?
Back to the article?
We're back to the article.
Done with the amendments. Okay. We'll count that.
We're on the Article 2.
Okay.
Final questions or comments on Article 2 as it is on the screen,
Full funding, okay.
which was amended,
Yeah.
just to be clear.
Good. Okay, so just, I wanted to share with everybody here, make you aware, it sounds like some people may find this surprising, but I had a discussion with the school board a few months ago about cost per student, which I think is an interesting and useful metric. We can compare ourselves to every other district in the state. So I want you to think in your heads, where do you think Litchfield ranks against every K through 12 district in the state? Are we at average, a little above, a little below? On cost per student? 20%. We spend less per student than 80% of the districts in the state. Department of Education, you can download their data set. They have a spreadsheet for every year. Furthermore, I went back 8 years. We've been below average every year and falling further behind all of the last 6 years. So I actually came down before the amendments when Mr. O'Brien, when you said we don't fund our town, we don't fund our schools. And it's just a fact, the numbers are there. We are $2.6 million below state average in last year's budget using the state's numbers. That's all. Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. Dan Harrison, 95 Pinecrest.
So I find that interesting because every year we underspend significantly. So are we to spend to boost our numbers, or do we spend because we need to?
So I'd like to respond to that. We should spend because we can benefit our students.
But the money is there.
We should spend every penny that the taxpayers have authorized. I agree, I'm talking to the school board. They
Okay.
should spend every penny that's been authorized for the benefit of our students.
Okay, we have Article 2. Question, comment?
No, it's just pretty clear that, I'm sorry, William Zayas, 27 Weatherstone Road.
Thank you very much.
It's pretty clear that we have a lot of unfilled positions, and I think providing additional funds to the need in this town for additional educators is very clear. We significantly underpay our paraprofessionals and our educators compared to other towns, right? We are underspending not just on the kids, but on the people who are actually making an impact on our future. Please support this stuff, guys.
Mr. Moderator, quickly, just to address Ms. Douglas's point, the underspend is coming from two places. The underspend is coming from, number one, unfilled positions, right, which we desperately need. So yes, there's underspend. We wish there wasn't underspend in those because we would be doing a lot better as a district if that was the case. The second thing that people need to understand with special education, there's underspend because we allocate money based off of the projected need on the actual caseload of students based off of the services that they need. That's legally obligated need, right? We can't just say, oh, well, we don't think we'll spend it all, so we won't put it there, because then we're obligated to spend it, and we can't meet our legal obligations. So there is oftentimes underspend that results from changes in that need. For example, if a student that had a need moved districts, right, there might be underspend. So that's where the underspend is coming from. It's not because we are asking for money that we don't need. On paper, that money is needed at the time that it's asked for.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Ronald Blinas, 15 Riverview Circle. The discussion of this article, and likely the ones coming behind it, really do speak to the difficulty and confusion that's been created by trying to understand the Warrant article that was passed previously and the thoughts that have been implemented as far as what is a new position. I think there's a lot of confusion. I don't think the Warrant article prevents the school board from adding positions within their approved operating budget, but there's disagreement between the selectmen, the budget committee, and the school board. I simply ask at this point that they make a commitment today to work on that immediately and try to resolve it. If there isn't consensus, then there needs to be some form, whether they bring another warrant article next year, to resolve this, because it's confusion that is becoming a distraction. And I agree, and I've said this before, I think the school board needs to be able to work within their approved budget and hire and allocate funds as they see fit through the whole year, because it will change from this time forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no others wishing to speak, it looks like Article 2 will go on the ballot as amended.
Mr. Moderator, I would like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration of this article.
We have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 2. Do we have a second? We have multiple seconds. We'll call this to a vote. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 2, please say aye. Aye. All those that oppose to restricting reconsideration, please say no. The ayes have it. So, before we move on to Article 3, we have now been at this for 3 hours. We are going to take a short break so people can go to the bathroom, maybe fill up drinks, things like that. I hope to be back in here and ready to go between 10 past and quarter past.
You weren't texting me, were you? Someone was texting me actually from right down. one more thing to say.
Ready to go? I know, I was gonna say, can you take three with that? Jeannie, so that's a yes.
You look like you were about to take off. All right, everybody, can we settle in? Either there's a lot of people in the hallway, or about half of you left.
Yes, use your teacher voice.
All right. I call us back to order at 1:15. With that being said, I'll read Article 3. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Litchfield School District and the Litchfield Education Association, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing level over those paid in the prior fiscal year. Year 24-25, the estimated increase would be $679,707. In the year 25-26, the estimated increase would be $634,719. And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $679,707 for fiscal year 2025, such sum representing the additional costs attributed to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels. Majority vote is required. The estimated tax impact per thousand is 56 cents. This is recommended by the school board at a vote of 5-0-0. This is recommended by the Budget Committee at a vote of 8-1-0. For this article, we will have Chairman Ames to speak.
Thank you very much. I appreciate those of you that are sticking with us. We're gonna move through the next six expeditiously, that's the plan. In terms of this warrant article, I had the privilege of working with two really great negotiating teams. On behalf of the LEA, we had Sean McDonough, who negotiated and was the chair and did a great job going back and forth. We had Amy Ash and Sandy Doucette from GMS. We had Robin Corbeil and Jessica Garrett from LMS. We had Noah Benoit from CHS, and then in addition to that, we had Corey Sulzan, an LMS teacher and LEA president, and Carolyn Late, LMS teacher and LEA secretary. On the school district side, we had myself, Tina Harrison, who's the school board's vice chair, Dr. Jetty, Mr. Totten, Ms. Falzone from Human Resources, and then we were assisted by attorney Mike Elwell. The goal of any contract, particularly with our educational teachers, is to attract, retain, and grow excellent faculty. That is always the goal of both sides moving in. We want to see Litchfield succeed. In order to do that, we need to have the best of the best. We need great teachers, and we have them, but we need to keep them. How do we do that? So we negotiated I didn't write it down, but I believe it was at least 8 sessions. It was a lot of time spent going back and forth. We didn't always agree. We came at it from different perspectives, but this is the end result, which is fully supported by the school board and nearly fully supported by the budget committee. In the year 1, the salary increases are a total of $630,732. That includes FICA and retirement. It should be noted that that represents a 5% increase for our teachers during that year. I would note that also, for transparency purposes, that those who have been teaching and aren't on the highest step would also receive their step increase. Those who are on the highest step do not receive a step increase, and they only receive that 5%. For the knowledge of this room, for many that don't know, more than half of our teachers by next year will be on that highest step. We have a lot of teachers that are already up there. We increased the co-curricular stipends by $33,000. We increased and added co-curricular special assignments for LMS curriculum facilitators. The goal behind that is right now we have a lot of horizontal alignment between our teams. So for example, with the middle school, the 5th grade team collaborates, the 6th grade team collaborates, the 7th grade team collaborates. We want vertical. We want that vertical alignment amongst our groups, and the hope is that these LMS curriculum facilitators will be able to do that. So the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade science teachers can then coordinate and talk about how students move from year to year. In addition to that, as has been alluded to many times during today's presentation, we are vastly understaffed, particularly in our paraprofessional area and our lunch and recess monitors. That means that for the school that has recess, for GMS, we need recess monitors out there covering those students to make sure that they are safe. And so what we did was negotiate that up to 5 times a year, a teacher could be asked to cover a duty, a lunch or a recess duty, and that they would be paid that $25 up to 5 times. And this results in an increase of the budget of a max of $5,000. Again, we hope we don't need to use that. We hope we have all of our positions filled, and we can keep our teachers in our classrooms so they can be prepping, they can be taking their breaks and actually taking a break when they want to, which I know doesn't happen, but they should be able to. But again, it's in there if we need to do that. The total year 1 costs for this is $679,707 for year 1. The salary increase for year 2 is a 4.75 increase. So again, year 1, 5%, year 2, 4.75%. And this totals $634,719. This is relatively straightforward, but before I turn it over to questions, I want to take a minute to publicly acknowledge and thank our teachers, our rock stars who each and every day shower our children with love, inspire our children, comfort our children, and give them the confidence to be whatever they want to be. They are not useless babysitters. They are our everyday heroes who deserve our support and respect. As indicated, more than half of our teachers have been here 15 years or more. Think of all of the students that have gone through their classrooms, that they have taught and sent out into the world, that now contribute to the society we live in. They're police officers, they're firefighters, they're electricians, they're engineers, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're nurses, they're artists, they're plumbers, they're everything out there. And this is many of our children here in Litchfield, and they wouldn't be there without the education of our teachers. More than ever this year, and has been an incredibly difficult time to be a teacher. The challenges and pressures on them and that they are facing is enormous. As a town, we have the chance to show our support by ensuring they receive fair and comparable wages. And as a school board, we are imploring the town to support Article 3. Thank you.
Okay, questions, comments on Article 3?
So we are the three principals of the three schools, and we'd just like a moment to speak to this article.
And we believe these comments apply to Article 5 as well, so.
Please just state your name
Dan
and which
Mitchell-
school you represent. when
Dan
you
Mitchell,
speak.
principal of Griffin Memorial School.
Jen Grantham, Litchfield Middle School.
Jacob Hess, Campbell High School.
And while the comments on social media about useless babysitters, we believe, do not warrant a reply because they're insulting and incendiary, if you do want to follow that logic, we did want to point out that the average going rate of babysitting in New Hampshire is $16.48 per hour. If that is the case, and you do believe that they are babysitters, each and every professional in the building should have a salary of $3,558,968 a year. So anything short of that in these two articles is considered a bargain. Thank you very much.
Jim Norton, 24 Woodhawk Way. First of all, thank you guys for coming out. It's 60 degrees in the middle of February and sunny, and we're all in here, so thank you guys, and thank you for all you do. But my question is for the Budget Committee, the one that said no, are there reasons behind why you said no and why we couldn't get a unanimous decision? As you know, unanimous decisions from the Budget Committee drives how the town votes, so I'd like to ask that question. Thank you.
Yes, William Hayes, you can thank me for saying no to this amendment or to this article. And it's solely based upon the cost of this contract, this two-year contract, compared to the previous two-year contract. It's nearly doubled. So I'm just representing the taxpayers. I do believe that the teachers deserve a contract. I'd just like to see it a little bit less strenuous.
That answers the question. Any further questions or comments on Article 3?
Hi. If there is any article that you vote yes on for the school, make it this one. These people they are babysitters. Sometimes they are the lone source of parenting that a kid gets because they don't have a life at home. They feed the kids, they wipe their noses, they clean up when they get sick, they do whatever they have to do. I come from a long line of educators, over 5 generations of my family, and I'll tell you right now, this group has had 2 contracts that were subpar. It is time for them to get their due. They need it, they've earned it, and I hope that this is a unanimous vote for the citizens in this town. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or comments?
There's not.
Okay. You will see Article 3 on the ballot as presented.
Mr. Moderator, I would like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration, please.
Motion to constrict reconsideration. Is there a second? Call us to a vote. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All those abstain? Motion passes to restrict reconsideration of Article 3. We now have Article 4. Shall the Litchfield School District, if Article 3 is defeated, authorize the Litchfield School Board to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 3 cost items only. Majority vote required, recommended by the school board by a vote of 4-1-0. Ms. Ames?
Thank you very much. The point of this article here is to allow the school board the chance to renegotiate and go back to the drawing board with the LEA negotiating team if the vote were to fail. And the reason we need the ability to do that is because our teachers need a contract. And if this fails, they would have to go a full year without a contract. It would be stale income for them. There would be no increases whatsoever. And we want the ability, we're asking the town to give us the chance. We hope we don't need it, we hope this passes, But if we need it, the ability to go back and renegotiate and then call a special meeting so that the town would have a say in approving a potentially different contract. If based off of the feedback we received, there was a problem, we could try to address it. So that is the goal behind this article.
Any questions or comments?
Hello again, Jim Norton, 24 Woodhawk Way. Everything Mr. Leary said, everything Ms. Ames said about teachers, you could add to that list. To see a 4-1-0 vote from a school board, from an article that gives them a chance to get paid and to get benefits, I don't know who voted that no vote, but I really would like to hear why that was a no vote, and extremely upsetting that that was done. Thank you.
I was the no vote. I voted no.
Mr. Polanski, just so they said they know, just say your name.
Okay, Peter Plansky, 144 Talent Road. I was the no vote. I voted that way because I'm a big believer in the no means no thing. And typically when you do a special meeting for that, you do not get a representative group that attends. It's one side or the other. It's outside of the regular election cycle, and it's just not, I don't think it shows the true feeling of the town.
Any further questions or comments on Article 4? Seeing or hearing none, you will see Article 4 on the ballot as presented. Article 5, Support Staff Association Contract. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to approve the cost items included in an agreement to modify the 2022 through 25 collective bargaining agreement reached between the Litchfield School District and the Litchfield Support Staff Association, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at current staffing levels over the amount that would be paid under the existing contract. So in 23-24, appropriation already in fiscal year 23-24 budget is $170,951. 24-25 would be $279,103. And to continue, and to further raise and appropriate the sum of $279,103 for fiscal year 24-25, such sum representing the additional costs attributed to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels. Majority vote was required for this to pass. The estimated tax impact per thousand is 23 cents. And this is recommended by the school board by a vote of 5-0-0, and it is recommended by the budget committee by a vote of 5-3-1. Speaking on this article, Mr. Shoemaker.
So I was the school board member that handled this negotiation on behalf of the board. This was not a contract year to negotiate with LSSA. We approached LSSA to ask if they would be willing to open negotiations because we are overwhelmed by vacancies for our support staff. We have them up on the screen right now. You can see obviously 28 paraprofessionals. It is devastating our teachers, it is devastating our kids, and we are honestly just at a loss for how to solve this problem. This is a problem that is prevailing across all of education. It's not unique to Litchfield. And the reality is that these professionals have other options. They have other options for employment, whether it's in districts that are paying much more than Litchfield is paying, because we were paying them much lower than other districts, or whether it's just in other areas, other professional areas. And so we had to find a way to stop the hemorrhaging of people leaving and stop the hemorrhaging of lack of services being provided to our students, and just try to support our staff as a whole. So we opened this contract, and the support staff came forward and was very, very, very appreciative and reasonable in their conversations with us. You'll see on the next slide here that the increases in their salaries are not the same all across the board, and that's because they came as a group and understood that there are certain areas where we are really, really struggling, and they came forward as a group and said that we need to address those, and that was a very collaborative approach that we very much appreciated. because that does help keep the overall cost of this down. Going back to how this is being paid for. So obviously we have a exorbitant number of unfilled positions. So the amount, this is retroactive to January, so the raises would be retroactive to January. And anything for this current fiscal year that we're in is covered by unfilled positions. So that 179.51 is covered by unfilled positions. The amount that would be raised and appropriated for 25 would be the 279.103, which would be the tax impact to the voters. For year two, so all of this raise is all a one-year raise. There wasn't multiple year raises with this. However, any employee who is not at the highest step would still be entitled to their 3% step increase at the end of this.
Anybody with questions or comments on Article 5?
I also just would mention one more thing. There was in some of the discussion with the Budget Committee relative to why members, and they could speak to it, why they might have voted no on this. There is a belief that, when you have a contract, that you stick to the contract. And I just want to be clear, the contract sets the terms for their employment. It doesn't bind them to continue working here, right? These are all employees at will. And so ultimately, that's fine. We can hold them to that. We didn't have to open this up. But the reality is people are leaving, people are not wanting to work in these jobs, and we had to solve that problem. So, that is the reason behind that.
John Latcher, Town McGowan Drive. I just had a comment. I think we should be looking into what the real reason is why people don't want to work here, rather than financial. Thank you.
Hello again, Jim Norton, 24 Woodhawk Way. The reason is they're paying $15 an hour, and they should be paying $25. I applaud the school board for doing this. This was huge. I volunteer at this school more than I'm at my house some days, and I can tell you that the increases shown in this slide for a custodian that makes $15 an hour to go to 17 is not a big deal. Those who don't know Chapel that works in this building spend the day with him. This man makes $15 an hour, and he works like he makes 50. So, again, I applaud you for doing that. I thank you for doing that, and hopefully this passes.
So you're up.
Scott Sicard, 10 Brandy Circle, and like these positions in the school, like teachers are heroes and everything, but these people in the school are so important for the school to function and operate. And why would you come for $13 an hour when you can go work at Dunkin' Donuts for $16? And what you experience in the schools and the things you need, the situation, like GMS, like we know how much in shambles GMS is, like even the facility alone, to work in those conditions and to be underpaid and to deal with the things you have to deal with, like even getting them to 15 or 17 or the 13 or 14 still isn't enough to, we might not even fill these positions at that increase because they, like I said, they can go do something else where it's not going to be as stressful, it's not going to be such taxing and burdensome on them. But I think this is a first step in the right direction, and we should be supporting these people unequivocally.
Lauren Crowley for Calawa Circle, and I'm also the food service director for the Litchfield School District. And as somebody who manages and oversees and works very closely with a lot of these support staff, positions, I would just like to add that in addition to teachers, paraprofessionals, our food service staff and custodians, they all need certifications. There's different government requirements they need to maintain at all times. My staff handle money. This is just a way, and I'm very supportive of this, to say that thank you for all you do, and hopefully this will help out. Thank you, school board, for opening this up to give the support staff a voice, which sometimes I feel gets overlooked. So thank you very much, and I hope this passes.
Tara Coakley, 2 Waterview Circle. I'm a parent of 3 kids that are on IEPs. I am also a special education teacher at GMS. I am so glad to hear that the school committee did come forward, recognize that this is a huge issue that we're facing not just in Litchfield, across the nation, with teachers and paraprofessionals. My kids in our classroom, when we go out in the hallways and we're walking through, there is not one person that won't stop and help us. I had our custodian in the beginning of the school year coming through, mopping floors, and I'm short, couldn't reach to put something up on my bulletin board, stopped what he was doing to help me. I go to the cafeteria with my kids. The lunch ladies there are so wonderful with them. They take the time to talk to them. They take the time, they're like, nope, no worries, you go sit down. It takes a little bit longer for some of my kids to get to their tables. They put their numbers in so they don't have to do that. In my classroom, my paraprofessionals are helping kids with potty training. They are helping me teach kids. They are collecting data. My classroom does not function without paraprofessionals. The kids in my classroom are not safe without paraprofessionals. So thank you for doing this. I really appreciate the amount of money. I understand the tax burden. I wish we could give them a lot more than that. I think they should be starting at least $25 an hour, to be honest, for what they have to do. Thank you, and I hope this passes.
Yes.
Hi, Darlene Jimziak, 5 Arcade, oh my God, I'm sorry, I'm not a public speaker. 5 Arcadian Lane. I am also the lead food service at LMS. And I also wanted to let you know that I've also been working as a custodian because they are so short-staffed and overwhelmed. And I really, really hope you pass this article. The other question I have is who voted no and why?
Scott Taylor, Budget Committee member. 2 reasons why I voted no on this.
Okay.
One, first of all, out of contract, I look at it that there are positions like custodians, for example, I believe in this building has not been at the capacity. Why not then eliminate one of the positions and pay the other 2 or 3 the amounts that have been brought up here? I think there's other creative ways to be able to do that.
Okay, that's your opinion.
Okay.
Thank you.
I voted no due to the same reason as Mr. Taylor. Contract year, it's not a contract year. I believe in living up to a contract until it's fulfilled. We didn't see the teachers coming forth asking for more money during the middle of their contract, which they are absolutely deserving of. And just this one warrant article almost totals the entire town tax impact. So I voted no.
Thank you. It says there's 3. Is that, who's missing?
Hi, William Hayes. I voted not to recommend this article, again, because it's breaking a contract, and I do represent the taxpayers.
All right, thank you.
Hi, Derek Barca. I didn't vote no, I abstained. And the reason I abstained was because my wife's a paraprofessional, she'd be affected by it, so.
Okay. Any other further comments, questions on Article 5? Not seeing any.
I'm going to move to restrict reconsideration on Article 5.
You'll see Article 5 on the ballot as presented. We now have a motion to restrict reconsideration on Article 5. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. We'll call this to a vote. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration, please say aye. Aye. All those not in favor of restricting, please say no. Restriction passes unanimously. So now we'll go on to Article 6, LSAA contingency meeting. Shall the Litchfield School District, if Article 5 is defeated, authorize the Litchfield School Board to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 5 cost items only. Majority vote required, recommended by the school board, 4-1-0. Any questions or comments on Article 6?
the streak alive, sorry. Jim Norton, 24 Woodhawk Way. Again, I see a 4-1-0 vote. I assume it's the same reasoning behind it because of special elections, but in my core, I believe the responsibility of a school board member is to have the best interest of the teachers and staff and students, and not to concern themselves with the town and worrying about special elections or what that looks like on its face. So, thank you.
All right, any other comments, questions on Article 6? Hearing none. You will see Article 6 on the ballot as presented. Article 7, Employee Benefits Reserve Fund. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $178,756 to be added to the Employee Benefits Non-Capital Reserve Fund, established in 2022 for the purpose of funding the payment of negotiated employee benefits, including but not limited to health insurance reimbursements, changes in coverage of policies chosen by employees, severance benefits, and such other benefits as are from time to time negotiated and become contractual obligations of the district. This sum to come from the June 30th fund balance available to transfer on July 1 of this year, with no additional amount to be raised from taxation. Majority vote is required for this. The estimated tax impact is 0. This was recommended by the school board, 5-0-0. This was also recommended by the Budget Committee, 9-0-0. On this, we have Mr. Polanski.
So this is money that's set aside when people indicate they're going to retire from the school system. This $178,000, those people have decided not to retire, so the plan is to take those dollars, set them in the reserve account, so when they do eventually retire, that money is sitting there. That way it does not have any further tax impact, no fluctuations. The only change is if somebody stays a couple extra years, right, they go up very modest amount. So it's a pretty, it's sort of prepaying some folks' retirement benefits.
Any questions or comments about Article 7? All right, seeing none. Article 7 will be on the ballot as presented. Article 8, Building Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate 50% of the fund balance remaining after Article 7 is funded, up to a sum of $125,000, to be added to the Building Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund established in 2005 for the purpose of funding school capital improvements, building maintenance and repairs in the Litchfield School District, with said funds to come from the June 30th fund balance available for transfer on July 1 of this year, with no additional amount to be raised from taxation. Majority vote is required. The tax impact is 0, and this is recommended by the school board by 5-0-0. This is recommended by the Budget Committee, 9-0-0. We have Ms. Harrison to discuss this.
Thank you. Building Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund was established in 2005 for the purpose of funding school capital improvements, building maintenance, and repair. The current balance in that account is $234,212.69. This is our quote-unquote rainy day fund. The board acknowledges that we, even if the school warrant passes, we're still about 2 years away from opening the new elementary school. And in that time, we have several systems and multiple structure failures that may need to be addressed, which can be quite costly. In addition, our newest building, which is CHS, is now 24 years old. And we're seeing wear and tear on this building as systems and components age as well. So adding $125,000, the board feels is just good budgeting and saving for that inevitable rainy day.
Any questions or comments?
Yeah, John Latcher, 10 McElwain Drive, Litchfield. You said that you've had this since 2005. How much money have you put into the Griffin Memorial Elementary School since then?
out of this particular fund or in
Yeah.
other? I don't have that dollar amount in front of me.
You don't have that for us? Does somebody else have that?
Sorry. Next one, after that? His question was, how much have we put into GMS?
Since 2005, when this first started, this fund.
Yeah. We'll get back to you on that.
When?
Well, it's,
As far as maintenance is concerned.
would definitely exceed that amount. Right.
Are you asking how much they put into the school or how much they've put into the fund?
How much they put into the school as far as maintenance.
Okay.
All right.
That's not an easy question for them to answer, apparently.
Yeah, we'd have to look through and find about 20 years' worth of budget, so we can email you with that answer, and you can post it publicly or share it on your show if you'd like.
Could you say it at your next meeting, school board meeting?
Yeah, I believe we can, yeah.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody have anything else on Article 8? Hearing none. You will see Article 8 on the ballot as presented. Article 9, Capital Improvements Expendable Trust Fund. Article 9, shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate 50% of the fund balance remaining after Article 7 is funded, up to a sum of $125,000 to be added to the Capital Improvements Expendable Trust Fund established in 2020 for the purpose of funding the study. Planning and costs of new construction or renovation of existing facilities in the Litchfield School District with said funds to come from the June 30th fund balance available for transfer on July 1 of this year, with no additional amount to be raised from taxation. This amount is consistent with the capital plan adopted by the town of Litchfield in September of 2020. Majority vote is required. Estimated tax impact is 0. Recommended by the school board, 500. Recommended by the budget committee, 630. And for this, we have Ms. Harrison again.
Surprise, surprise. The capital improvement trust fund was established in March of 2020. The purpose was to fund the study, planning, and cost of new construction or renovation of existing facilities. The current balance is $254,631.89. The key difference between the fund is this allows for the funding for the study, planning, and cost of new construction. So this is the fund that we have used with taxpayer-approved funds to fund expenditures towards the architects and other studies, civil engineers and other studies that have been done in the planning and cost of GMS. And it was also used to fund the renovations done at LMS. It was created to ensure there was no ambiguity with the purpose of the other fund if we decided on new construction. So this is separate from the rainy day emergency repairs fund. This is more of a proactive way, and approving the $125,000 will allow us to replenish that fund.
All right. Do we have any questions or comments on Article 9?
Scott Taylor, 6 Lilac Court. The reason why I was against this particular article on the Budget Committee was the fact that it is funding the study planning of new construction. Clearly, we've spent enough money in terms of the GMS project. Whether it passes or fails, we've dumped the money into it to be able to figure out what that project needs. It was brought up earlier today about why don't we go ahead and increase our funding per student? This is $125,000 that would be unspent that's going to go to a fund that is going to have no need, because we did the LMS project. We already know what the GMS project is going to be, and there's not going to be new construction at this building. So why would the school board want to do this versus either one of two items? Either spend it in the current budget for student needs, or it was brought up earlier about special education. Why wouldn't this $125,000 be redirected to the special ed fund?
So it says new construction or renovation first and foremost, right?
Yep.
So if you look at the two accounts, there really is, we're trying to differentiate between repairs, right? The roof starts leaking, and things like gym floor needs to be replaced, right? Like that to me is something that would be a renovation of a building. Likewise, if you're projecting out, 20, 40 years, I don't know if we'll get to the size, but if we got to a size where there did need to be an addition onto this school, for example, I would view that as a new construction element of that. So I understand that there is a common conception that this is focused solely on the GMS project, but I think that we're looking at this as a much longer term solution. There are schools that are in our position looking at GMS right now that have millions of dollars in an account because they've been proactive. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do is set ourselves up for long-term success, whatever those needs may be. So that really is the focus of it.
Okay, but you could be using it to take care of immediate educational needs today. Like, for example, the GMS counselor could have replaced this particular warrant article.
Right, so there's a balance. There's a balance between at what point do you start proactively doing things, right? And so that's what we're trying to do. We had impassioned citizens that feel like that GMS counselor position is necessary, and that they've brought that forward. So
Okay, thank you.
And one other part of the answer to this is that what other districts do with the money that they build up in an account like this, when a bond passes, they'll use the funds, they'll zero it out at that point because it's obviously taking care of what the project was, and they'll use it to kind of even out the tax impact. So you can, if you read it, it does say for funding the cost of, so you could use it as a payment on the bond. So that money would then, go in that use, and then you would have other tax dollars available for other purposes. So, the future board will have to decide, all depending on how this plays out with the warrant. But I just want to point out that that is a use of it, and part of the reason why we created that fund, because the original one, it was kind of ambiguous as to whether you could use it toward a new school. And so we asked the taxpayers supported us and said, yep, we'll establish this, and it's really is specific for new construction. Had the board decided to go there, they have, and now here's where we are. That money could be used in that way.
Okay, Mr. Moderator, can I ask one last question?
Sure.
So, school board, which way are we going? Because I had Mr. Shoemaker come up and say that this is part of, building out a long-term plan, and then I have Dr. Jetty saying that it potentially is going to go towards the Article 1, but yet that funding isn't part of the description of Article 1. So which way are you planning on going? Are you planning on depleting it for the GMS project, or are you planning on building a long-term fund with this?
The beauty of this is we don't have to decide that right now. We have the option. And so the language of the expendable trust is to give future boards the option to either use it on renovations if they choose to, on aging facilities, or they can use it towards a bond payment if they needed to. They're not restricted in that way. For today's purposes, for us, I don't think this school board sitting up here has to answer that question because we're not invading that fund right now. But it is a question for future school boards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments on Article 9? Well, looks like we're going to see Article 9 on the ballot as presented. So with that, we have completed our business and all of our warrant articles for today. Please remember that voting is March 12th, and that's going to be at the gymnasium from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And if there is no, is there any other business to come before this meeting today? Hearing none, please remember to turn in your ballot sheets to the stage or the ballot clerks before you leave. Hearing no requests for further business at this time, I will accept a motion to adjourn the meeting. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Sounds like we're closed. The meeting is now ended at, we'll call it 1:57. Have a great day. Enjoy the weather outside before it gets cold again.